the void for a single clue, but silence answers like it always do. How will I know if I've played my part when the game resets before it starts? Where's the reset button? This sim don't come with no instruction, just endless loops and broken functions. Everything's broken. Nothing works here. A mirror cracked reflects my face. Each shard a fragment I can't replace. Time rewinds, then speeds ahead. Living feels like I'm already dead. The script keeps running line by line. I'm lost between the threads of time. Control's an illusion I can't hold. This code is ancient yet so cold. How will I know if I've played my part when the game resets before it starts? This sim don't come with no instructions, just endless loops and broken functions. How will I know if I've played my part when the game resets before it starts? Where's the reset button? This sim don't come with no instructions, endless loops and broken functions. Here we go again, go again, go again.
Here we go again. Go again. All right. Y'all let me know about my sound check in here. Hey, life is getting interesting. We're doing all kinds of things. On the back end, I got all kinds of awesome legal things out of the way in my life. And listen, got CPA, all kinds of good news from a CPA. Look, I'm moving shit. I'm doing things. And listen, ever since my video with Shanta, it's been all right. I've even had shills. I said I was going to stand down from the shill war. And as soon as I did, all these little bitty shills started taking shots at me. And I'm cool with that. I'm very over the target. And I'm cool with that. But you know what? This video here was necessary because it's profound what you're going to hear. What you're going to see in this video was compiled over 300 years ago by a man who finished his book by 1741. So this book ends in 1741, cataloging all these weird, anomalous events going back thousands of years. But we're only going to start with 526. This is the beginning of the calendar that you and I live in today. The Anno Domini calendar began officially in 526 AD, 4 years after the Dark Ages technically began in 522. The only year in world history the Nemesis X object and the Phoenix phenomenon occurred in the same year. The only year in all of recorded history. And we've even done the mathematical projections trying to see any time the 138-year periodicity of the Phoenix and the 792-year cycle of Nemesis X would ever come into contact again in 5,000 years in the future, they still do not touch. Very intriguing. So, the Tartaria narrative is absolutely rife with AI support. The problem I've had with the Tartaria deal from the very beginning is that your evidence is entirely visual. You're going to show me a bunch of old pictures, and I'm an antiquarian, and I have proven to many people who have come to my property and gone through my materials that I have a massive collection of very old books, and we've gone through the photos, gone through the pictures. Tartaria narrative seems to come up with more and more visual evidence, more and more photos. But if you notice that all these Tartaria videos, they don't ever provide provenance. They don't ever tell you, well, this book came from this book right here. Some of them do, don't get me wrong. Some of them are covering their bases. But then again, what you're seeing in the photo is being interpreted by the narrator. That's why this video is extremely important. The same scenario is happening, but the opposite end of the spectrum with the guys that are pushing the younger Dryas. And what I mean is you have your Hancocks and you have your Randall Carlsons, your Jimmy Corsettis, your Billy Carsons. They too, but it's the other end of the spectrum. They too are also providing a massive amount of misinformation, because in order to push the younger Dryas narrative, they have to ignore thousands of incidents in the historical record that were equally or more devastating than the BS they're promoting about the Ice Age. Why would you skip over the entire human historical record to push a theoretical model that has no historical backing? And even a lot of scientists have pushed back to it because they're not trying to hear that meltwater pulse 1B BS. So if any of you have been following and paying attention on social media, on different platforms, it seems that in the past 30 days or so, Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock are in extreme damage control. They're doing videos almost on a daily basis together, pushing every narrative in the world. And it's really interesting how they're even talking about Watchers and Giants and Enoch. And it is so pathetic. But I'm still moving forward. I really don't care. I just need you to know that's the opposite end of the spectrum to what the Tartaria guys are doing. The Tartaria guys what they're doing is showing you visual pictures that you have absolutely no idea if these are legitimate or not. And they can only go back to the 1840s anyway. So more and more pictures are being shown by more and more Tartaria channels in an era where for the past 5, 6, 7, or 8 years, AI has already been producing photographic evidence that's totally BS. So when is it going to stop? When are you going to admit that, damn, sorry guys, this is my 1035th video. It's time for me to inform you that we've run out of pictures to show you. Yeah, it's not an infinite source to continually have more and more photos and more pictures of it. It's just not true. And most of the I'm gonna have to say about 90 to 95% of the Tartaria narrative stuff is all AI produced. It's all AI generated. It's not trustworthy. And this presentation here is gonna show you the business, why the Archaix model takes its data from old books. It's becoming more and more aware people are becoming more and more aware that if you're not getting your historical information from historical books, you're not getting anything close to the truth. Now, I understand the arguments. Almost anybody who pushes Satan's Little Season or the Tartaria narrative, they're always going to default to, well, how do you know those books are real? Which is the whole purpose of Archaix. I tell people all the time, by the time you actually get anything surfacing in my published books, in my articles, in any of my thousands and thousands of posts, or as videos on YouTube, I've already eliminated what I think is bullshit. I've already done that for you. So we're going to go through this book. It's amazing, but it's to illustrate a point that we've been lied to about the population. We have been told statistics under the uniformitarian model as if we were very, very low in population centuries ago and even 1,000 years ago. And only recently have we exploded in population. Cities had hundreds of thousands of people even centuries ago. We have the actual annual registers. We even have, I forgot what they call them. They're in this book. I'm going to show them to you. but they're actual documents that are published all throughout Europe showing you the death toll for the plague, how many people died, and then basically telling you how many people survived. And you can just add the two numbers together and say, damn, that city had that many people in it, and it's all over the ancient world like this. So let's see. I may have a package being delivered. Hold on. No, I have a visitor, but it's okay. They can do all that without me. All right. So in anything that you absorb, you're to chew it all up and spit out the bones. If something doesn't resonate with you, don't force it. This is what we do in Archaix. We don't force fit anything. Everything must fit. But if something doesn't, we just put it aside until we have more information. So these five previous videos, let me share my screen. Especially for those who have missed them, or if you're new to my channel, you're gonna need this. Let's see. All right. So if you're not entirely sold on this being a psyop and this being total BS and all fantasy and just the byproduct of overactive imaginations with help from intelligence agencies who are steadily flooding the field with all this falsified data, you may want to check out these 5 videos. This video here is the 6th in my debunking Tartaria and Satan's Little Season narrative. But the first video is about Tartaria itself. I even give you a year-by-year historical deal about Tartaria. I show you the very first time Tartaria entered the historical record. It's all in this first video right here. Tartaria, the Phoenix Connection. This is the first one you would need to check out. This gives the background on the whole Tartaria deal. Then Star Forts, Mystery Solved. This is a very comprehensive video. Every single one of these are jam-packed full of data. So this is a Star Forts Mystery. That's the second video, Mystery Solved. The third one is an actual critical analysis of Satan's Little Season. This is the Archaix chronological challenge to Satan's Little Season. This video was done in direct response to that JT loves JC guy that's always pushing Satan's Little Season. And I sent him a message, and told him, hey man, look man, anytime you want to debate this, let's do it. You can come on my channel, I can go on your channel. It doesn't even matter to me. But this guy has gotten real popular. Not on his own channel, really, but being a visitor to so many other venues and platforms. And it's total bullshit. It's all made up, every bit of it. So I went into extreme detail on things that you're not going to hear from the Tartaria guys. They're just not going to tell you. But I went the reset of the 1800s, fact or fiction. The data that I show you in this video, you're not going to get through this video and still think that that there was a reset in the 1800s. There wasn't. Overwhelming evidence that there was continuity. Also, master artisans of the 19th century. I'm not saying there wasn't a reset in the past. I'm saying that it didn't happen in the 1800s, probably didn't happen in the 1700s either. We have books, especially in the Archaix library, an unbroken continuum year by year. But there was no interruption at all. So the second video goes into the engineering specifics and the techniques and the construction methods to show you, man, these guys just don't understand building principles. They don't understand hydraulics. They don't understand what we really had accessible to us in the 1800s. guys, we built ships that are far more complicated than any building on. There are no land-based structures that are anywhere near as complicated in engineering as the gigantic ships that we built in the 1800s. None. A gigantic ship is a building designed to sail across oceans. It's far more, the engineering is far more complex. So that's just one argument in Master Artisans. And then this, in this one here, you're going to get a timeline of over 100 destructions, massive losses of population, showing that the population statistics are all wrong. It's because that what we've been educated today is in the uniformitarian model. But the uniformitarian model isn't what the historical record is showing us. This book cataloged in the early 1700s, by 1721, I think he was done. And he had went back over 1,000 or 1,500 years meticulously documenting everything from all the libraries, everything he could. And this is a history of catastrophism. There's nothing uniform about it. This is not the uniformitarian model of history. This is the concealed and buried history of catastrophism that is deliberately kept from the public. That's what this video is about. So, having said all that, I still haven't checked to see if my audio was all right. I'd have to go way back in the past for that. I'm pretty sure nobody's saying anything, so evidently my audio's good. I was so excited. My tail was waggling, just waiting for this video. I ran errands this morning because we have a huge freeze coming, so I'm preparing for 7 days to go under. I may hibernate for 7 days and read some good books. If I can get online, I'll do it. I do have, in case my internet goes out, I do have this that I take on trips to hotels and stuff, and this gives me really good internet. Matter of fact, about 200 live videos on YouTube are all done on this device. So it works good. It works good, but I might have to use that because the infrastructure out here just really sucks. It really does. That's why I got 2 generators, one to back up the other one. We're not used to 19-degree weather. Nights going down 19 degrees. I've been throwing out extra squirrel feed, extra bird feed. They're all in the rafters out here. Yeah, I'm just all about preparation. I'm getting my little sterno heaters and my backup propane heaters. I got heaters that'll, like old antique heaters, the old radon heaters, but the inside now is set for propane. So I can those heaters get super hot. So, I mean, even if my generator, something happens if it gets down to 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 degrees overnight and I can't start my generators, which I don't know, man. I do a lot of maintenance on them, so I'm pretty sure they'll be all right. But if they didn't work, if my gas froze, hell, I don't know. Whatever happens, I still have a whole bunch of those little butane and propane tanks and all kinds of little heaters I can just run and, keep me and the dogs warm. It'll be all right. Man, I love that coffee, but I already drank it all. Coffee was so good, I want the recipe. All right. So I am now into, what was that? A 19-minute rant, and we need to get started. We just need to get started. I love that intro song. I got so many of them. I got so many awesome new intro songs. I was thinking about writing one for J Dreamers. He just keeps popping up in the fields like, damn, dude, you don't know when to be quiet, man. You don't know when to sit down, dude. All right, so let's share the screen. For somebody who hates me so much, he's always watching all my videos. Doesn't even make any sense. I don't get it. I don't get it. All right. Not of this world. Lacey Z 138. Nelson Perez. All y'all clumped together right there. Oh, Kevin Moss. Tight behind you and sweet oversold. Jasmine, always here. How you doing, Jasmine? Don't say nothing, Jasmine. I know. It's about time to do a cipher video. Jonathan Rogers, that wrench looks good on you. Yeah, Gnostic Academy and his chat recently were all exploded, talking all kinds of shit. I watched the video. I encourage you. You guys know, when people are shilling, they're frustrated. Like Gnostic Academy, his name is Marty Leeds, and he's had an attitude for a year and a half because I won't recognize him. And it's basically what it is. It's a psychological issue. We actually agree on many fronts, but for some reason he's really fixated about the solar zodiac being far older than it was. And he had thrown something out that there's no way to show that 713 BC was the year change. And he obviously doesn't know my material. And I encourage him to keep watching, because in about a week, I'm about to do that video like I promised you guys I was going to do. The actual year, the actual year 713 BC, when the year changed from 360 days to 365. But so much of the Archaix data actually compromises things that Marty Leeds believes. So he's turned these into like personal attacks, and he's pulled up people that were formerly associated to Archaix that have nothing to do with my data. He's pulled up my criminal history. It has nothing to do with my data. He boasts that he runs an academy and that he has a school and he has online webinars and courses, and none of that moves me. I just don't care. And it's and I tried to explain to him a year and a half ago in his own chat, and I took screenshots like I always do, like with J Dreamers. I said, listen, man, your attitude and you cherry picking, you can't take 18 facts and find any nuances in them that you disagree with and try to show your community that these are dead wrong, and then call it debunking and say, hey man, I debunked Archaix. It's pedantic. If you're not willing to address the whole, then just say so. You don't have, it's so childish, but it's okay. I was right. A year and a half ago in his chat on his channel, unless he deleted the comments, I did tell him, I says, dude, this attitude you have, man, and this is not, you're not going to grow. You're going to stagnate. People are really intelligent and they're going to see what's happening here. This envy and jealousy and strife, man, it's not going to work for you, dude. And, all this negative energy you throw at me, dude, I'm not going to recognize you because of your behavior. Your behavior is subpar, and I'm not cool with it. You may present yourself as being very professional and adult to others, but your actions speak otherwise. And your chat is absolutely filled with almost all the people I've blocked from Archaix. So that tells me a lot too. I don't care, man. You can hate me all you want. I don't care anymore. All right. So a general chronological history, man. You know how them old British titles are. Oh my God, man. It just goes on and on and on and on. It's volume 1, 1753. All right. So 17, man, I can't even remember what the date was. Anybody real quick? MDCCXLIX. It's something 59. Is this 1759? Yeah. All right, 1759. Anyway. Yeah, it's anybody who uses Helena Blavatsky for a source, you're just reading fiction now. Yeah. G.G. Young is guilty of it too. It's just pure fiction. Rudolf Steiner relied on the listen, all that older Golden Dawn stuff, we've already talked about it in Archaix, man. It's sad, man, but it's all fiction. All that Atlantis 9,600 BC, and Steiner said 60,000 years ago. It's all BS. It's sad, man. Some of these people are the same people that are trying to educate you in what they perceive to be spiritual values, and yet turn around and not only use some really weird source materials like Helena Blavatsky, who never cited a source and said she got all her information from monks in a cave in Tibet. That's a red flag right there. So, and then goes to talking about root races and periods of time where men recorded events in hundreds of thousands of years. She made the same mistake as Berosus. Yeah, man. Can't go with it, guys. Can't do it. So let's begin. We begin our trek through history, and this is going to be rapid fire. I'm going to tell you now, as we go through these historical citations, I'm going to provide you the date. You're going to see the date. I'm going to show it to you. But this is why we read these old books, what you're going to learn in here. about these photos, these Tartarian these photos that show Tartaria, that show architecture underground. It's all very compelling, but once you finish watching this video, you'll be able to mentally throw all that Tartaria bullshit out the window. Every photo you have ever seen of flattened cities, of cities pancaked, of architecture found underground, every bit of it's going to make sense. And no Tartaria was necessary. That's what this video is. I'm also going to show you that even 300 and 400 years ago, these people knew about bioweapons. They knew about the shadow of an eclipse. Do you remember April 8th? What happened on April 8th? The United States government and corporations turned, standing in the shadow of the eclipse, into a tourist deal. Several million people lived in the shadow of the eclipse on April 8th, but millions more traveled all over the United States to be in the shadow of the eclipse. In this old book, you are going to find out what happens to somebody biologically if they've been infected with something and they're directly in the shadow of the eclipse. This is from a 300-year-old book. Let's do it. All right. This is going to get crazy, guys. Way more than that. I can't remember everything that was in this book. I'll remember as I read it, but this is going to be a hell of a ride. Okay. The Anno Domini calendar began in 526 AD. This is when it was backdated. It was not used at the time. It wasn't even used until after the year 1000 did they start incorporating this. So it was probably actually created by the Roman Catholic Church after the year 1000 or 1100, when all the universities and the stone castles and the Normans and all of them began to spread a advanced architecture across Europe. Infrastructure across Europe. Coming out of the Dark Ages, in the Middle Ages, they began to rewrite things that happened in the Dark Ages. Rewriting the Dark Ages was absolutely necessary because you and I know some strange shit went down in the Dark Ages. So 526 is only 4 years after the Phoenix event of 522 AD involving Nemesis X and the Phoenix, only year in history they were here together. This begins the 25-year Justinian darkness period. Earthquakes, the sun went dim for a long period of time, volcanic activity, strange things falling out the sky, plague killed about 1/5 of the human population, men in black started appearing everywhere, and human population started vanishing. This is a very weird period beginning the Dark Ages. In the month of May, a terrible earthquake shook Antioch. In the time of dinner began a fire, which consumed what the earthquake had left. The fire raged 6 days. Many thousands of people perished. The beauty of this noble city was defaced and destroyed. Why is this important? This is the very first year of the Anno Domini calendar that the entire world uses today. This is the very first historical citation, and it is of a total destruction of the city of Antioch, people buried alive in buildings in their homes. Therefore, we now have Antioch, which is already an ancient city. In this year, we have Antioch pancaked. What did they do in ancient times? When buildings collapsed, they often came in and poured lime. They laid down rubble and stone from other places, got it all flat. Then they used great weights, rocks, and logs, and they pressed it down. And they just built over it. Many ancient cities have multiple levels. The photos you see that promote this Tartarian narrative are photos from all over the world, like Antioch, that show substrates with human skeletons in them, full of mud, full of lime, full of whatever they were using for like concrete, gravel, human bones, artifacts, all that stuff. All these photographs have nothing to do with Tartaria. They have everything to do with all the massive earthquakes and destructions and collapsed infrastructures that have always been built over. This is just the beginning of this right here. In the year 528, November, Now, May, in the month of May, what is that? We're on the Nemesis ecliptic. Remember, here's Sol's ecliptic, here's Nemesis ecliptic. But Earth is in two planes at the same time twice a year. Remember that. Earth, our world, the terrasphere, actually overlays part of the Phoenix field in the month of May, and then overlays part of the Nemesis X field in the month of November. You can, if you can't break free of the Newtonian physics model of the planets and the soul, the heliocentric model, that's fine. You can still think in terms of planets and it still works. It is the soul plane, it's the Nemesis plane. But if you are able to process this information as fields, and that the terrasphere is a field, it's the field of experience we have today. And Phoenix is a field. And Nemesis X is a field. And they have their own phenomena and even sometimes their own physical laws. And in the month of May, every single year in the month of May, the field of Terra actually merges with the field of Phoenix every single year in the month of May. But it only becomes really weird, super weird, every 138 years. But every single year on the Day of the Dead, November 1st and November 2nd, depending upon your hemisphere, we pass through the Nemesis field. This is every single year. So, because that's the plane, Nemesis plane. So here's November. Antioch was shaken again by another terrible earthquake. Several of its buildings overturned, and 4,780 of its inhabitants were buried under the rubble. We got to move fast. We have 138 stills to look at. We just started. All right, so 535 AD, still Dark Ages, was an earthquake at Pompeiopolis, which swallowed multitudes of people. Blood rained from the clouds. A grievous mortality followed. Is it normal for the sky to have blood rains and red rains and some type of cinnabar colored rain falling during an earthquake? Is that even normal? But again, we have Pompeiopolis pancaked, buildings collapsed, people buried alive in the rubble. What do you think? They clear out what they can and they build over it. What happens during an earthquake? Liquefaction. What happens during liquefaction? The ground vibrates to the point where buildings sink. And by the time we find them, because they're all filled with dirt, like Göbekli Tepe, absolutely packed with dirt, we assume that they either buried it or it was a mud flood. When it was actually an earthquake, liquefaction, vibrating the ground, liquefying everything to where it just sinks until the vibrations stop and the ground is hard again. A great comet appeared, and this would have been in the year 539 AD. A great comet appeared. Fiery battles with abundance of blood were seen in the air, followed by great inundations in France. So France flooded from excessive rains. The Tiber River overflowing, that's Italy, made terrible slaughter. On the 12th of the calendar of July, the sun was eclipsed. It was so eclipsed that the stars were seen. An earthquake traveled over the globe. It destroyed Cyzicus and swallowed up half of it. Here's a whole city. Cyzicus swallowed in an earthquake. And according to this chronicle here, the earthquake was worldwide. Again, all those photos you see of pancake civilizations and things found underground could have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 earthquakes. No Tartaria necessary. 545 AD, a general earthquake, and in 545, the great famine of corn, wine, and oil. Then was a terriblest and greatest plague over all the world that was ever paralleled or recorded in history. It spared neither age, sex, rank, or place. God only could afford the least help, not man or art. It began among the Egyptians at Pelusium. Thence it spread over the globe, not missing one corner, nor did it seize the same persons twice. It began thus. Listen, this is the Dark Ages. A plague that started killing people began as demons in human shape appeared to many, and when they fell upon them, they imagined themselves struck by some man, and the disease quickly fell on them. What in the hell was happening during that tertiary field period? Demons in human shape appeared to many. Sounds like the apocalypse. This sounds like the Great Tribulation. That's 20, 25 years ahead of us. Like I said, we got to move. We got a lot of ground to cover. Some of these will require discussion. And Functius, an earthquake at Constantinople. Functius is a writer. Let's see, as Diochanus says, there had been one there in 546 of 40 days continuance. Can you imagine? Constantinople has tens of thousands of stone buildings. Can you imagine an earthquake that lasted for 40 days? A 40-day long earthquake would have sank many structures and buildings, caused so much that had to rebuild the entire city. Constantinople has been rebuilt multiple times. It is now called Istanbul. And many of the photographs from excavations in Istanbul are the source material for a lot of the Tartaria narrative. Tartaria being Turks, anyway. Under Justinian, the emperor, appeared in 547 AD, a depopulating plague in Constantinople. This is ancient Byzantium. Later, once the Turks took Constantinople, it would be called Istanbul. It's the same city. It was a massive metropolis in the ancient world. And the countries about. So it's not just Constantinople, the seat of the Eastern Orthodox Roman Empire, but even the countries about. And daily there died 5,000 people. And some days, 10,000 people died every single day. Okay, this raises the point. What in the hell type of populations were existing back then for cities to continue? Because Constantinople continued as a major metropolis, even a few years after this, when they went through a depopulating plague. And that for a long period of time, up to 10,000 people a day died, and yet the city continued, and even later flourished. The populations of the Dark Ages were huge, but they were getting culled in these events. After the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages, human population exploded again. Yeah, the arguments of the Tartarian narrative, they fall short. The historical record, all these guys talking about all the manpower required for a star fort or everything. Yeah, we've covered all that in the star fort videos. Listen, we had manpower. I was on a prison work detail. I know what 250 men can do in an 8-hour period. I've seen it. Terraforming and everything. The massive amount of work that 250 men forced to labor can do in an 8-hour period will blow your mind. So don't tell me what 10,500 soldiers or laborers couldn't do when they were directed by their supervisors when they worked sun up to sundown in the ancient world. I know it's astonishing what they could build. So moving on, the year is 552 AD. Now, in the Anno Domini calendar, 552 is a Phoenix number. It's not on the Phoenix timeline of 138-year periods, but under the Anno Domini, it is. It's 552, which is a Phoenix cycle, is 138 times 4. In this year, there was a great earthquake in Greece, which overturned many towns. As, I can't read that, it's Nopatum, Petra, Corona, and others. The sea also broke in and overflowed many places in Greece, and on its going back left innumerable unknown fishes on the shore. The year is 558 or 557. Constantinople, again, the biggest metropolis of the ancient world at that time. The Western world. Constantinople was shaken by a terrible earthquake, which continued many days. The winter of 557, Rome had an earthquake, which did it more mischief than ever any enemy had done before. That's saying a lot because the Gauls destroyed Rome, sacked Rome. So if an earthquake did more damage than that, then we have the source of some of the underground structures of Rome that were destroyed, built over. This is the year 562 or 563. And whether it ceased presently after his writing this history, we know not. But he says it was the longest plague that ever appeared in the world, citing Procopius. In Constantinople died 10,000 people a day. This plague was preceded by often the appearance of several suns at the same time. Other times the sun was quite darkened. This is shortly after the other plague. So we have two back-to-back plagues that depopulated Constantinople, but Constantinople still continues. These populations in the ancient world were huge. About the time reigned Emperor Justinian, in whose reign the sun for greatest part of a year gave so little light that it was but equal to the light of the moon, the sky being clear, without clouds or any interfering bodies, after which followed a great famine. Guys, this is what I've been telling you that a vapor canopy does. Vapor canopy does not appear as clouds in the sky. A vapor canopy is a thickening of moisture in the mesosphere at such a high altitude that it appears like a mirror during the day. But at nighttime, like the ancient Native Americans called it smoking mirror, it was like a smoky mirror. But it wasn't clouds suspended in the skies. It was even higher than that. At nighttime, it magnified the stars in the moon. But during the daytime, when the sun went over, that moisture in the mesosphere got hot. In the mesosphere, the heated water droplets suspended throughout the mesosphere would expand, and basically what it created was a fog. So the vapor canopy by day was like a fog, but at nighttime it was a crystal clear lens of water that magnified the heavens. This is the descriptions we have in the ancient world of the vapor canopy. It looks like in the Dark Ages, for a period of time, because Justinian ruled for a long time, for a period of time, vapor canopy struggled to build and hang for a while. Didn't last long, for sure. 568 AD, before the year that 200,000 Lombardians invaded and entered Italy. These are the Lombards. The Lombards this is the race that I mentioned to Ralph Ellis when we were talking about northern Italy, and when he was showing me where the origin of the Arthurian legends comes from, the churches and the statuary, the reliefs. Ralph Ellis was showing me this stuff about Italy. I didn't know. He was educating me on this. I had no idea there was a connection to Italy. And that's when I had asked him, hey, man, is this the period of the Lombards? Because the Lombardy was actually founded by Vikings. The Lombard means long beard. And they were invaders, and they took northern Italy, and they carved their own kingdom out of it at the time. 200,000 Lombardians invaded and entered Italy to dispossess the emperor of the East, to expel Christianity and introduce paganism. Were seen many prodigious fiery battles fought in the air, blood springing out of the earthen walls. What was going on in the early Dark Ages? They're seeing battles in the air. What the hell is blood springing out of the earth and the walls? 570 AD. In the third year of Tiberius Constantine, at noon, was a terrible earthquake which demolished Daphne. Daphne is an interesting word. It's the phoenix, the fiend in feminine. Let's see. Daphne and many houses of Antioch. The same year of fire was seen to run through the sky. At this time, says Turinens, The people of France lying near the Liger and Radan were almost swallowed up by inundations, floods, from great rains which poured down incessantly 20 days together. Italy suffered prodigiously from these floods. The whole wall of Lyons was thrown down by one earthquake. Let's see. Berdegalia, I guess, was shaken by an earthquake. It's in 570. In 588 or 590, Rome, where the Tiber swelled so high that in some places it reached to, and in others overflowed the city's high walls. And the water rushed in with such fury that it spoiled and defaced the greatest part of the buildings that were near the river when the flood ceased. The fields were so soft and covered with slime and mud that they could not be tilled nor sown. Hence a general famine. The flood not only demolished many stately buildings and ancient monuments. Again, photos showing ancient structures half buried in buried ground have an explanation in the historical record. There's no need to invent a Tartarian narrative. There's no need. We have so many examples that don't involve Tartaria at all. The earthquake, which continued 30 or 33 days in Palestine, in 38 continued almost a year in Italy. This is the year 652. Earthquakes lasting 30 days, yeah, that's going to destroy a lot of shit. The earthquake, which continued, all right, we got that one. In the year 672, in the month of May of the same year, 672, a terrible fire shined in the sky 10 days together, to the great dread and surprise of all. You guys remember, I went through this book once before, but not on this subject matter. I wasn't looking for earthquakes. I wasn't looking for unusual stuff. The only thing I showed you in that whole video was all the times crazy stuff happened in the month of May. That's all that video. Remember, the name of the video, when I went through this book before, it was called The Merry, Merry Month of May. We're looking at mostly different stuff in this video. The book is huge. Moving right along. After an eclipse of the sun and another of the moon, both near the same time in May, in July began and raged 3 months in Rome, a most desolating plague, whereof multitudes died. There was a great earthquake in Mesopotamia. This would be the year 680. So we have another earthquake, eclipse of the sun. This time, another an eclipse of the moon. Yeah, man. A plague that lasted 3 months. Isn't it strange how these things all happen in tandem? In the year 724 or 729, the chronicler is not sure. He provides both years. He's unsure. In the 8th year of Leo III, raged a plague at Constantinople, which quickly carried off 300,000 people. Now, 300,000 people is a massive amount of people. Constantinople and its surrounding areas, its suburbs, must have had 1 million people in the city. Now, it's mind-boggling how many people were alive back then, building, sailing, doing everything we do today, and that so many people could die from a plague like that. It's disturbing. But this is the Dark Ages. This is what's going on. Now, this also answers another mystery that's put out by the Tartaria guys. They make a big deal. A lot of these guys pushing Tartaria, they make a very big deal about the catacombs. They make a very big deal about the architecture of the catacombs. I've heard them say, isn't this puzzling? Why would you build such ornate keystone architecture, cyclopean masonry? Why is this a street cobble on the bottom of this passage? And why are all these human skeletons shoved in all these niches and all these doors? That's a doorway. Look, that's a window half buried. Human skulls and skeletons. Of course, it all makes sense. We haven't even started this presentation. I still have 100 slides to go through at least. And I'm going to tell you now how many times whole entire populations had to bury, I'm talking about the survivors had to bury the dead. Often 9/10 of an entire city was decimated in a plague. And in the historical record, I'll even read you some citations, they didn't even have time to bury them. The important thing was before bodies putrefied, they needed to get them covered up. So the only thing they could do was fill up buildings, streets, lay them out, and then bury them there. Shove them in all areas of the town that they know is earthquake damaged, or they know they're just going to have to cover it all up and rebuild. They would fill up cellars. That ornate keystone was probably the front of a church. That street was actually a street between two buildings. The cyclopean masonry you see on each side was an alley in between two buildings facing the sky. But they didn't have any gravestones. They don't have any grave diggers. There's no way to dispose of the bodies fast enough. And in the medieval times and in the Dark Ages, it was common practice to bury the dead in the buildings they died in. And just put all that and bury it, cover it all up, rebuild over the city. A lot of these pictures of all this stuff, it's not a mystery. I'm not saying these guys are lying to you. What I'm saying is that it does not promote a Tartaria narrative to show a picture of catacombs full of skeletons when the historical record is rife of hundreds of verifiable accounts of plague decimating entire city populations. It's such a simple explanation. So 300,000 people is terrible. The year is 745 AD. A comet appeared over Syria. The next year, from the Ides of August to the Calends of October, was gross, thick darkness. Afterwards, Palestine, about Jordan, and all Syria was shaken by an earthquake. Third space, you need to come to Texas, man. I need to put you up for a while, man. Let you go through my library and let you come over here and kick it and have some Texas barbecue. Yeah, there's no way I can pay you back for all the support you've given me, man. I appreciate it. You need to come to Texas sometimes. You're more than welcome. So, was gross, thick darkness. Why would a comet bring darkness for a long period of time? Followed by an earthquake. What's really going on? 745. In the following year, 746, in January, there was a great earthquake in Syria, which buried innumerable people under the rubbish of their cities and towns. The plague, which begun in Sicily, spread over all the Asiatic islands and invaded all Greece. Someplace the darkness at Constantinople, the earthquake in Syria, and the comet this year. So he's just itemizing a bunch of things that happened. But that's crazy. Comets, great darknesses, and earthquakes. And I want to call to your attention. Listen, if you're listening to me on a video like this, you're listening at your own risk. But I have to tell you guys and describe to you what's not being said here. Because these are some of the pictures the Tartaria guys have been showing. I remember going through one channel and he was showing pictures of the scratching marks on stone and stuff like that. And he built a whole narrative talking about that it was a punishment in ancient times to bury people alive. And sometimes they would bury whole families alive. Bullshit. Bullshit. Those people were trying to scratch their way out after an earthquake entombed them, because cities, even 15 centuries ago in the Dark Ages, cities still had lower sub-basement levels from previous occupation levels of the city. Other areas, every city in the ancient world had an underground. And it's the former cities that they're living on. The rest of the city's been built up. New gardens, new soil, new land, rain brings things, the air deposits dust. dirt from the city. And one of the things that really reburies cities, and most people don't even understand this is so critical to understand these mud flood cities of the 1800s. Guys, when the automobile first came out, look at the microfiche. Don't let me sit here and tell you something is true. Verify it for yourself. In the 1890s, all the way up till 1920s, the automobile was heralded in all the newspapers as the savior of mankind. Do you know why? Because now all that oxen, all that cow, all that sheep and horse shit that was over all the cities of America and Europe could now be cleaned off and minimized, because these cities didn't have really advanced sewer and drainage systems. Horse shit was everywhere. Ladies in waiting and women that were all fashionable had shit boots. You can verify all this. Every woman put their shit boots on when they were going anywhere, and then in their purses, or their servants would carry their shoes that they would wear inside of buildings. In buildings all throughout New York and all the major cities in the 1800s had ante rooms where you put your shit boots. This was life back then. And when the automobile came out, all the newspapers were on it, talking about it's going to save mankind, because a lot of people used to get sick from all of the decaying, mildewing horse shit that filled every single city. So this is all in the historical record. Nobody has to make anything up. It's all verifiable. The automobile was looked at as the savior of American infrastructure, engineering, and cities because of the horse shit. And in the pictures, it looks like mud. So in 2016, 2017, 2018, we get guys talking about mud flood that in 2019, 2020 just turned into a Tartaria narrative. I'm just saying, use your heads. This year, such a plague in Constantinople that there was not a house unshut up. Dead were buried in heaps in all places. An earthquake in Palestine. What year was that? 747 AD. Oh, concerning the pictures I was talking about where they've literally found scraping marks, you have to understand, some of these people were buried alive. Their chamber or their room from a sub-basement level of an ancient stone city was perfectly intact. But the access ways to get higher got blocked, and then in an earthquake, liquefaction makes everything soft because the vibration of the earthquake, the seismic waves soften stone. So it's not the superhuman strength of the victims trying to claw their way out. Remember, they're in absolute darkness, buried alive, sometimes whole families. Man of the house, the mother, they're probably scraping that stone. But in an earthquake, that stone's no longer as hard as it normally is. And fingernails can scrape it and leave grooves. So when the earthquake is over with and the vibrations stop, it looks really, really impressive. Like, damn, they tried to claw his way out of here. Look, they clawed the stone. They didn't claw the stone when it was hard. Clawed the stone when it was vibrating and it was soft. So I've seen one channel talk about those claw marks. You know, man, people, they didn't have a ritual where they buried families alive. Those skeletons are found because they were buried alive. It was sudden. It was an earthquake, and they were trying to claw their way out. So that was the dead were buried in heaps in all places. There was a most frightful, the year 749 or 750. There was a most frightful and pernicious earthquake in Syria and Mesopotamia, which demolished not houses only, but swallowed up or destroyed cities or removed them from place to place. This is the first reference. It's very unusual. It's not the last one. I found it interesting because In Natural History by Pliny the Elder, we have a reference to an estate in Italy or Corsica, one of them, where a man's estate literally corkscrewed and like east became west. His entire estate literally just twisted on land, corkscrewed, and everything was opposite. The house is on the other side as the pasture. And many people came out to look at it, and it was very bizarre. Now this is in Pliny's Natural History. I mentioned this in previous Archaix videos a long time ago, explaining how everything in the simulacrum is a mimic of a real world. It's like machinery. It's like our world is like Dark City. We don't actually have a pole shift, but it feels like one because the entire stellosphere rolls and the sun and the moon do crazy stuff. So when the entire sky's doing one thing and the sun and the moon are doing it too, you're going to get vertigo because the ground's going to be vibrating to add to the effect. And then areas of the earth, upheaval and subsidence. The upheaval and subsidence are what shift bodies of water around. Pole shifts are mimicked in this experience. They're not real. It's all Dark City technology type experience. So when you see whole cities were moved from place to place, I know this sounds bizarre, but it's in the historical record where maps have literally changed the surface of the world. It's like it got up and floated over here, and this area moved over here, and everything just changed places. It is so bizarre, but this is in the historical record. This is what's here. This is only the first reference to such a phenomenon in this book. I'm out of coffee, but water tastes so good. Oh, somebody's blowing up my phone. Hold on. Only my dad is going to blow up my phone and put me on a group text with a whole bunch of people and put me on the spot, calling me out to a poker game in the middle of a live video. Thanks, Pops. All right. You can tell he's not watching today. Well, Dad is important. Yeah, man. 775 AD. At Constantinople in the middle of August was 6 days of darkness. So as people were obliged to use candles at midday, we're still in the beginning of the Dark Ages. This was followed by such a plague that there was scarce room near the city to bury the dead, but were forced to bury in their vineyards. And in some historians are to be credited, and if some historians are to be credited, little red crosses fell from the air on their children. The city being almost depopulated, the emperor was obliged to bring people from Armenia and Syria to repopulate the city. Syria was so shaken by a terrible earthquake that it was not only throw down many houses, but removed entire towns from one place to another. Have you ever heard of these historical incidences of like slippage? Like areas of the surface literally moving, sliding somewhere else, taking the whole towns and city with them? Because that's what's being described here. It's during earthquake activity. So bizarre. What are you going to do if you go outside one day and little tiny red crosses are falling from the sky, but they seem to fall and then all of a sudden navigate and only attach to your children and nobody else? I mean, I don't know what you're going to do. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull this book out and reread it and try to figure out what the hell's going on. That's what I'm going to do. I showed the cover page and title to this book at the beginning of the video. This is a chronographer, and he's citing everything right here. He cites all his sources in here. Like you see right here, do you see CHR.Magdeb? Yeah, this was a famous, this is the Chronicle of Magdeblion or Magdebion, or I can't remember. It's in my first video, but I looked it up online, and yeah, it's in German. This is the English translation of a lot of the stuff that's in there, but the actual Chronicle of Magdeblion it was a city, and it had a huge chronicle of the world. It's badass. But he cites a lot of people in here. So in 797, which is really interesting because it's right there at 798. 798 is a Phoenix phenomenon date. It's on the 138-year Phoenix timeline. This is in the Dark Ages. In April 797, Sicily and Crete shaken by an earthquake, as was Constantinople in the month of May. Irene, the Empress of Constantinople, having murdered her son Constantine, the sun went dark for 17 days. That's a Phoenix phenomenon deal. Now, it being in 797 doesn't surprise me. I've already explained to you guys what's going on. I've already explained how the Phoenix years are. They're not like our years. The Anno Domini years, a Latin Roman Catholic system, is following a imposed Roman Catholic calendar starting with January. The Phoenix calendar doesn't go from January to December. It goes from May to May, or it's May to May because it's the middle of May. So the calendar actually begins in the middle of May and then goes all the way through June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and then to the first half of May to close the Phoenix year. But that year begins in 797 in the month of May. So this is a Phoenix phenomenon episode. 1763 did the exact same thing. All the Phoenix phenomenon stuff happened. Well, a lot of it happened in 1763. It's very well documented, as I've shown. But it bled over into 1764. We're waiting on 2039. After the month of May in 2039, we'll begin the Phoenix phenomenon episode. It will last all the way to May 2040. 798. This is a Phoenix date. The sun darkened 17 days in England. This is independent of the 798 days that it darkened over Constantinople. Or is this two separate chronological records that are documenting the exact same event, but giving it two different years because they're confused? I tend to agree that that's probably the case. It's probably the same 17 days. It's just that this chronologer knew that 798 was an important year and probably decided not to put it at 797, like where it really belongs, because this chronographer didn't understand that this timeline is May to May. There's confusion here, but it's also an admission that they may have known about this phenomenon. So the sun was darkened 17 days in England. On the 9th of the calends of January came a most prodigious hurricane from Africa with irrefutable force. Irresistible? I'm sorry, irresistible force. It cast down to the ground and destroyed infinite towns, houses, villages, and trees. The same year happened a great inundation of the sea, which carried off much cattle. This is what's happening in England. So, a whole bunch of those photos that you see of pancaked substructures and all that, there's no evidence of a Tartaria. It's evidence of things like this. When massive destructions were well documented, this is 798. This is Phoenix phenomenon right here, but it could have been any other year as well. I'm just trying to show you this massive Tartaria deal that's being put out there. Systematically, when you go through it data point by data point by data point, it all falls apart. But the only way it can fall apart is by actually reviewing old books and see how things really were. If you don't, it's really easy to fall for that. So there's two huge misinformation campaigns being released into social media for you to buy into. Both of them serve the same purpose. One of them is skip the whole historical record and listen to Graham Hancock's fantasy younger dry ass rock falling from space, supported by so many other shills. And you ain't got to look at the entire historical record. It's not even necessary because we're making all this shit up. Or two, skip the entire historical record and let's invent a fantasy one and then claim it was suppressed and it was completely hidden, and then turn around, let's show a whole bunch of AI generated photos and some real photos and claim that all this is the evidence of that old empire. No, man, both of them are communist doctrines, and the communists vowed to make Westerners hate their history or forget it. It's a part of the Communist Manifesto. You better read it. That's why I'm wearing this shirt today, right here. Yeah. All they want us to do is hate who we are, hate our history, and make sure that our children forget who they are. 802 AD. 3 days before the calends of May, an earthquake shook all of Italy. Soon after, shocks were felt on the Rhine. That's Germany. And in France. So there's not a lot of detail here. It just says 802. But you can imagine the massive amount of destruction in villages and cities and in quays and wharfs everywhere. You can imagine. Again, old photos show destructions pancaked all over there. Yeah, there's not a Tartar in any of these places. In the year 824, about the summer solstice, fell out of the air in Burgundy a board of ice 15 feet long, 7 feet broad and 2 feet thick. What is a slab of ice? 15 feet long, 2 feet thick, and 7 foot wide slab of ice just falling from the sky. What did it fall off of? Remember Charles Fort and William Corliss, both of them meticulously documented 500 years of scientific and eyewitness reports of strange shit that just fell out of the sky. What's really up there? (840 AD) in August, Constantinople shook 5 days. Many houses with their families were ruined. By the time this happened in 840 AD, Byzantium was already 1,000 years old before it was called Constantinople. In Constantine, 365, 325 AD. Before it was even called Constantinople, it was called Byzantium. Byzantium was already a very ancient city. Can you imagine the families that got buried alive in 840 AD, not even knowing that whole families had been buried alive underneath them and by several layers? Yeah, man. That's the history of the world. The history of the world is catastrophism, not uniformitarianism. It's all catastrophe. 855 AD, on the Ascension Day, was a terrible earthquake at Constantinople and in several other places. Whirlwinds, tempests, hail, thunder, and great mischief. I'm pretty sure that's the crime. That's the crime. That's the crime. That's the post hurricane barrel crime wave in Houston. That's what they're talking about. Great mischief. Yeah, that's the post Hurricane Katrina, Louisiana, New Orleans crime wave of all those poor innocent street thugs that went and raped, pillaged, and plundered. Yeah, the death toll. More people died after Hurricane Katrina from street gang activity and all the crap that was going on than the hurricane ever killed. Remember, FEMA's not out to protect you guys. May the 23rd, an earthquake at Constantinople, which overthrew its walls. 860. All these are destructions. They require rebuilding. That's another Tartaria narrative that's just dumb. It's just so dumb. If you watch my videos on the 1800s and our building knowledge, the knowledge of masonry, the Mason guilds, our engineering course, listen, if you just watch those videos, you will understand. I show the pictures, the schematics. We knew how to build. How did we learn how to build so good by the 1800s? We had been destroyed 1,000 times. Once you've been destroyed 1,000 times, you know how to rebuild stone cities pretty damn good. The year is 874 AD. A plague of ugly, deformed locusts ate up the fields of France. They had 6 feet and 2 teeth harder than stones. So numerous were these locusts that they darkened the sun. In one day, what were they doing in the sky? I know they'd fly close to the ground, but what were they doing high in the sky? What have I shown you in Archaix over and over about insects? About seed pods, larvae, eggs, small reptiles, amphibians like turtles, fish. Where does all that shit come from? Over and over and over from scientific sources, I show you that this shit falls from the sky. In one day and night, they eat up all the greens and trees. But being driven into the sea by strong winds, they drowned. They were by the waves cast back onto shore, where their putrefaction proved fatal to many. So that by famine and plague, a third part of the people died. A wonderful comet appeared in this year, and in Italy it rained blood 3 days and 3 nights. A plague of ugly, deformed locusts. Yeah, well, it looks like somebody tampered with the locusts. Where did those locusts come from? Why were they deformed? Were the locusts released into the environment containing a pathogen already that really messed with the locusts and deformed them? And yet they became carriers to go infect another harvest, which was humans. The year is 930. Remember the number 930 in calendrics is very interesting. 930 is precisely 792 plus 138. That equals 930. It is the Phoenix and the Nemesis number combined. On the 6th of the calends of March, terrible armies and battles were seen in the air all night. The noise of the armies and cries of the wounded men were distinctly heard. What was going on in the Dark Ages? What in the hell was going on in the late Dark Ages that people would see 2 different armies not only fighting in the air, but they even imagined hearing them fighting and hearing the screams of the mortally wounded? What the hell was going on? (937). This is the Phoenix date. Well, it's close to one. I'm sorry, it's close to one. 936 is the actual Phoenix year. Now, I have never treated Phoenix like a sine wave. And what I mean is the Phoenix date would be 936, but phenomena in 930, 935 would be acceptable, and 937 would be acceptable. That's how you treat the phenomena as a sine wave. It's the actual year is the epicenter, but the year before and the year after are acceptable phenomena to be included as well. I've never done that. I am absolutely dead center precise in my Phoenix phenomenon data. I have to be, because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and I'm probably the most fact-checked channel in the world. I don't say that lightly. I got people always fact-checking me. You ought to see my emails. Listen, this is really important to say, though, because I'm hypercritical of my own data, assessment and collection. But if we treated the Phoenix phenomenon as a more like a sine wave instead of dead set May to May, then other phenomena could probably definitely be included. But this is the year after the Phoenix phenomenon of 936 AD. The sky being clear, the sun was darkened and became like blood and seemed bloody for several days. A great plague followed soon after, and especially a sudden death of people. Sounds just like the Phoenix phenomenon. Whole populations disappear. Sun darkens. Now, there's also the added chance that the chronographer himself misdated this by a year. This could be 936, and his own sources led him to believe it was 937. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. I never have to mention that again, and my Phoenix thesis is still strong. I don't ever have to mention that again. I'm just showing it to you. So here, this is all okay. That's 937. Here's 944. On the 16th of the calends of May was an earthquake, followed by an eclipse of the sun, again in May. May 16th. The merry, merry month of May. I really should have included the link to that. When I'm done with this video, the pinned comment is going to have the links to all 5 of those Tartaria debunking videos that I showed you at the beginning of this video that I already did. It is a prolific amount of research packed into those 5 videos. This is the 6th of that series. Basically just trying to tell you guys, man, this whole Tartaria narrative is total crap. 968 AD. In May were very tempestuous and strong winds, which corrupted the corns, vines, and fruit trees. Hence arose a great famine, an earthquake and a comet, an eclipse of the sun, and a grievous famine followed. We're getting close to that the year 1000, when everything really starts exploding. 979 AD. On the 5th of the calends of November, the heavens were all night in a flame. Armies and engagements were seen in the heavens. Many houses of Capua, towers of Beneventum, half of the city of Campania, and almost all of Rosna fell by an earthquake. Wow. Again, you don't know how many of those photos that you've seen. The real ones are just from the ruins of some of these destructions that I'm telling you about right now. You don't know. And none of those photos have anything. I mean, none of these destructions have anything to do with Tartarian narrative. You just don't know. Really, the information that I'm showing you is overkill. And the reason I'm saying that, it's just my habit to do overkill. You guys know, and anything that I promote on Archaix, I'm always do. You know, my Jesus material, my gospel, my dark scriptures, it's always overkill. Nemesis X, Phoenix Phenomena, always overkill. But even in this overkill really isn't necessary. The reason it isn't necessary is because the burden of proof doesn't lie on me to prove a negative. It lies on the Tartaria guys to prove their case. But they're far from doing that. 986. So great an earthquake as not only overthrew the walls and temples of Constantinople, but shook all of Greece. Remember, this book was written centuries before anybody listening right now was born. This is the year 1017. The English chronicles, which generally fall a year behind. What? I highlighted that because I knew that I was going to use that other date for the Phoenix phenomenon. Because the other date covered, remember 798, 797? Oh no, it's 936 is the Phoenix date, but we have stuff documented for 937. Here's the explanation right here. I can include that because it was events in London. And here, this chronologer right here says the English chronicles, which generally fall a year behind. Bam. I can include that in my Phoenix phenomenon data and not have any problem with it. I am my own worst critic, guys. Things have to really, really be good for me to include them in my data. Because I already know. I knew 20 years ago I was going to come up under attack. Yeah, man. The English chronicles, which generally fall a year behind. There it is. That's my explanation. That's why that was a Phoenix phenomenon episode we were reading earlier. Yeah, I know I'm a nerd. I get excited over little shit. 1021 AD. Man, I should have drank more coffee. 1021 AD. In May was a great earthquake in Barbary. This is the pirate estates. Barbary Coast, Morocco, all that. 1065 AD, the plague killed 600,000 Scythians when they were about to invade the Roman Empire. Can you imagine? What is it about Rome? I don't get it. King Mithridates IV in 83 BC and 81 BC was going to fight the Roman legions, and he got the Armenians, he got Tigranes, King Tigranes of Armenia to join him, all of Bithynia, Pontus. He gets everybody behind it. They're going to kick the Romans' ass, and a rock from the sky hits the battlefield and separates them. I don't get it, man. I don't get it. Who's protecting the Roman Empire? These events happen over and over. Rome was going to go down. 600,000 we're talking about bowmasters on the horse. Rome wouldn't have stood a chance, but they get wiped out in a plague. Come on, man. This is a construct. Somebody's controlling the variables. Remember, there's a lot of incidents like this, like the army of Antiochus. Yeah, how do you get wiped out at the only one spot that there's a pass on the beach so you can get your army from Egypt to Syria while your army is in the one vulnerable spot? A tsunami, which hasn't happened in 300 years, comes and pulls your whole army out to sea. WTF? The Chinese emperor, mandate of heaven, about to get taken out. Robert Greene in the 33 Strategies of War gives us an anecdote about that incident in China. Same exact incident. Two Chinese armies about to meet, and a rock from the sky comes. Boom! Scares both of them. They burn off. Doesn't even make sense. 583 BC in the month of May, the empire of the Lydians and the empire of the Medes, Turkey in the east, Persia, they're going to go to war. After 5 years of continual battles and warfare, they're going to do an end-all conflict, and they summoned everybody to fight for the Lydians and everybody to fight for the Medes, and they came together, and right before they were going to start battling, the sun darkened, and it wasn't the moon, and it scared the shit out of both armies. 583 BC, predicted 2 years earlier by Thales of Miletus. Wasn't the moon. Stopped the whole battle. In the calends of May was seen a comet in 1066, not only in England, but all over the world. It lasted a fortnight, that's 2 weeks. In October, a great earthquake did much hurt in many places. In May, a comet of a stupendous magnitude for 40 days. All right. 1077 AD. March the 27th was a general earthquake in England. The reason I have these marked is I'm just curious. Is England a place that we generally hear about earthquake activity? What happened back then that made earthquakes so prevalent in England? Because I'm about to read a bunch of them to you. They all happened in England. I haven't heard earthquakes happening in a very, very long period of time in the UK. I don't live in the UK. Have you guys had a bunch of earthquakes recently? I'm just curious. It's not a place that I've ever heard about earthquake activity. But there's a bunch back here at the end of the Dark Ages, in the beginning of the Middle Ages. Shoot, the UK is full of earthquakes. So I'm very curious. December 25th, a great earthquake in England. April the 6th was another earthquake and a hideous roaring of the sea in England and a great famine. A company of horsemen were seen riding in the air, but no vestiges of them could be found. Oh, this is just the beginning. There's all kinds of earthquakes in England. 1086, England had also a great earthquake. Try to get through some of these fast. 1089, on the 3rd of the Ides of August, at 3 o'clock, an earthquake in England. This is coming out of the Dark Ages and moving into the Middle Ages. It begs the question, what was happening elsewhere in the world that some of that pressure was being released in England? 1090 to 1091. Such an earthquake in Greece on St. Nicholas Day as overturned temples, porticos, and killed many people. At Constantinople were great clouds, which demolished houses. Clouds, which demolished houses. Filled valleys with water like the sea. Drowned much people and cattle. A great hurricane, which blew down and broke a large, beautiful statue with its pedestal, and such swarms of locusts as darkened the sun from their putrid carcasses. Next year arose a most desolating plague on man and beast. How is it that these things are always happening at the same time? Darknesses, flooding, earthquakes, and insect invasions. What's going on? Parthenogenesis, anybody? In Antioch in 1100 AD, Christians are forced to eat putrefying bodies of the Turks. It's a famine. The plague raged in Palestine, either from the blood of the slain, which had run into their reservoirs of water, or from the stench of the putrefying slain, or from the air. A great tower of Syracuse fell down in an earthquake and killed a multitude of people. Some of these are going to get kind of graphic. Some of the famine ones they're effed up. They're effed up, guys. There was a great earthquake in Lombardy. This is northern Italy. Lombardy, which continued for 40 days, which removed one large village from one place and pitched it down in another, undamaged. This is the third reference in this book to land masses literally moved to another location. Like Dark City, picking up estates and whole forests, turning them and then sliding them and placing them somewhere else, as if the simulacrum realized this is not an optimal place for this. Let me move it. It is so bizarre. But great was the mischief it did in other places. The magistrates of Milan, being met in a tower about the city of Busanef, I don't know what that is. Sometimes the F's are F's and sometimes the F's are S's. During a short silence of the meeting, instantly all heard a voice without, calling one of the men by his proper name. and commanding him to come forth immediately. But he, making no haste to answer, a tall person of solemn, grave, authoritative aspect appeared before them all and mildly charged the person called out. To go out, he obeyed. This is crazy. So all these magistrates are meeting in a tower. As they're meeting in the tower, they all hear a voice that calls somebody, one of them by name, and tells him to come outside out of the tower. He doesn't pay attention. And then all of a sudden, a solemn figure shows up in the tower and tells him by name to go outside. When he goes outside, this is what happens. He obeyed the person and went outside, and the tower instantly fell and killed all the rest. Well, I know what happened. It's like 9/11. It's like the guy who ate breakfast, who owned the towers of 9/11, and he ate breakfast there every day since 1973 when it opened. And the one day he missed out of 365 days a year was the day that the towers fell. That's the same thing that happened here. It happened in 1117 AD. It's the same thing that happened with the World Trade Center. There's no mystery here. Let's see. In the month of May was a plague of locusts at Jerusalem, which ate up the herbs, trees, vines, and sown corns. Most bridges in England were broken down by floods and rains. In the year 1120 AD, in the Vale of Trent was an earthquake which overthrew many houses and buried their inhabitants in the ruins. For it gave daily 10, 17, or 20 shocks. In the year 1128, this year died Johannes de Temporibus, age 361 years old. He was the armor bearer to Charles the Great, who died in 814. That's really weird, because it has two chronological reference points. One is that this is the year 1128. He was the armor bearer to Charles the Great, who died in 814. That would be 314 years in the past. 314 years in the past. This year died Johannes de Temporibus, age 361. So his age literally matches the age of a man who could have very well been the armor bearer to a man who lived 314 years earlier. I'm not saying the man lived 361 years. I'm saying that there's two chronological points right here that say that this is true. I don't know what it's really referring to. It is an enigma. All right. 1132 and 1133 AD, August the 2nd, a great eclipse of the sun, a general terrible earthquake, a roaring, hideous noise, though not equal to that mentioned by Bede in 369, which traveled all the world over when it rained wool, or hailed withal. Wool raining from the sky. Remember what Charles Fort said? There's been many times in our history when carbonaceous material just floated down from the sky. Nothing, no link to volcanoes, nothing. And animals and birds ate it up like it wasn't nothing. Remember the story of the Israelites in the Old Testament, manna, angel food. Yeah, it's so crazy. This carbonaceous material has rained from the sky many times. So great was this eclipse that the stars were easily seen about the sun at noonday. The earthquake was on the Friday after. It overthrew many houses and buildings. In 1134, the sea broke in on the land and overflowed a great part of Flanders and the neighboring countries, killed much people and cattle, the like the next year. Anytime the sea breaks in and pulls a bunch of villages and towns out to sea and stuff, that too could look like a mud flood to the older stone structures that are still in the ground. Over and over and over, we've seen these photographs that show it looks like a mud flood. It looks like ancient structures that were buried in dirt and mud. But a lot of times, those were exposed after the sea came in and wiped all the surface materials away, exposing the more ancient infrastructures that were more deeply buried. We have some I'm going to read to you where treasures have been found when tidal waves and earthquakes exposed deeper levels of habitation. It's in this book. Yeah, let me see if I can get 1,000 likes. I'd appreciate that. Not that I'm a like whore, but you know, I like my likes. This is 1141 at a place called Welshburn in Worcestershire. Rose from the earth to the sky a tempest of whirlwind and thick darkness. It threw down 51 houses, carried off the roof of the church, and with it hailstones as big as pigeon eggs, one whereof killed a woman dead. Great was the damage it did to shipping in Flanders. There were swarms of small flying worms which darkened the sun. Where are the worms coming during a massive darkness and a strange storm of hailstones? Where are these worms coming from? Parthenogenesis again. It's the only answer that makes sense. In 1156, in June, a great tempest which did much damage to corn trees and buildings. In 1156, in England, thunder and tempests were very frequent in July. Abundance of rain followed, which began August 11th and hindered the reaping and sowing of corn. Hence, many great and long floods, which carried down houses, churches, and then came the frost. They're not having a real good time in England 1,000 years ago. In 1161, the sun was eclipsed, a great famine and earthquake in several places, as at Antioch, Tripoli in Libya, Damascus in Syria, wherein were killed 20,000 men. In Sicily, the sea overflowed and drowned 5,000 people. In May fell a great hail, the stones as large as geese eggs, as also several tempests, inundations of rivers, such as floods, and loss of much people. After this were earthquakes and destructive thunder and lightning. It's a cataclysm. It's terrible. It's a cataclysm that provided visual material for people to take pictures of and for other people behind them to invent Tartarian narratives around. That's what that historical citation did. The sea overflowed farther in Friesland than ever was known. And let's see, even, what is that, Hadelin? In all the low country of Albia and I think it's Wera. Many thousands of people and cattle were drowned. At the same time, hail made fearful havoc of men, beasts, trees, and horses. In Poland was a famine. The year is 1166. Sexagesima on something 6. It's Latin. It's something 6. On the 6th calends of, I don't know what that is. On Sexagesima Sunday, the sea swelled and rose 3 days together. And in Sicily, it drowned 12,000 people. January the 26th was a great earthquake in England. An earthquake in Ely, Norfolk, and Suffolk. 1166. What are all these earthquakes going on in England? Can somebody answer me in the chat? Are you guys known for earthquakes in the last 100 years? Has earthquakes been happening in England? Because I've only covered like 60 years and we've got 10 earthquakes in England. Adam Cook, why would you ask me something like that? Does this mean Santos is an agent or misinformed? One, I don't listen to Santos. I have no idea what his message is at all. I haven't listened to him. I listened to all 11 of his political rants. They were genius. Santos went off. He went off. But I haven't listened. I don't know what his message is. I know he's into astrotheology. But you asked me a question that Santos is an agent or misinformed. I have no idea. What you need to provide context. I'm doing a video reading citations out of an old book. So what are you talking about? All right, let's see. Overturned by an earthquake. 1170 AD. The bishop and clergy, the abbot, let me blow that up. The abbot of Miletum, 400 monks and 15,000 people were killed. Many castles in Sicily and the neighboring islands were overthrown and multitudes of people killed. Antioch and Jerusalem were also shaken in June, and all the east and Tripoli in July. None could estimate the damages done, nor the loss of infinite multitudes of people killed. In Germany also were terrible earthquakes and inundations. No, earthquakes are not common in the UK. Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy to read about all these earthquakes in England. It's just crazy. Yeah, man. Yeah, Santos is special in his own way, Pamela. He and I don't have a lot of agreement on things. I mean, we don't really disagree on a lot, but I don't really have in common with him. And I wanted him on my channel, but then he went off on this huge rant. And then he got both of his big channels axed. And I was like, I didn't know what to think about all that. I was like, damn, man. He just went to war with the system. And that's cool. I applaud him for that. But I'm not willing to have that type of activity attached to my channel right now. No, man, that's crazy. Oh, Adam Cook says, with Tartaria, you just educated me. I had no idea Santos followed the Tartarian narrative. Maybe he'll watch this video and my other 5 videos where I go through all the historical and engineering data, and maybe he'll change his mind. I don't know. But I didn't even know that about him. Didn't even know. I know that he is like one of the OG authorities on astrotheology, and nobody can take that from him. Built a huge international community off that. I would never even attempt to impugn that. But I'm allowed to bring into contact into my field and bring into my Archaix family anything that I want to. And he is proven to be a risk. Not because he's a bad guy, but because he has no filters. And that's cool. He told the unadulterated truth, named names and did all that. That's cool. And there's places for that, like BitChute, like Odyssey, like True Social, like Twitter. There's places for that. YouTube has never been a place where you can actually just go off like that. So, I made the executive decision to keep certain people away from my channel until I know for a fact that they're not going to go postal when they get on it. All right. So where was that? Okay, so we're done with that. Multitudes in Germany were also terrible earthquakes and inundations. In 1174, this year, the whole world was afflicted with a cloudy, corrupt air, which occasioned a most universal cough and catarrh, fatal to many. Catarrh, I'm not really sure what that is. Maybe somebody in the chat. I know I have some specialists. There are specialists that follow. Some of these linguists and language specialists. Maybe you can figure out what a catarrh is. But this almost sounds like a contaminated vapor canopy tried to come back. 1176 AD was a great flood of the sea in Holland and other marshes in Lincolnshire and swallowed up much cattle and people. 2 days after it returned to its own boundaries, Milan, Italy, and England suffered by an earthquake. All over the Isle of Wight rained a shower of blood for 2 hours. So this is like the 5th time we've read about the sea literally coming all the way up on land and doing great destruction. Sometimes it pulls whole populations out to sea. Yeah, all this would result in the type of pictures we see pushed by the Tartaria narrative. And there hasn't been a single Tartar on the shores of England. I'm just telling you guys, man, there's always alternate explanations for things. And this massive amount of photography that's being produced as evidence of a Tartaria, yeah, most of it's AI. It's all fake. And a lot of it can, and the real photos can be explained. That's all my point is for this video. The real photos can be explained right here, because our world and different areas of our world is constantly being reshaped, reburied, resurfaced, rebuilt upon. And there are times when the older substrates of civilization, the deeper levels that have been buried for a long time, are exposed to the air through disasters. See where I'm at. Let me see where I'm at real quick. I don't quite know where I'm at. Gonna have to take a guess. What is this? 1828. That's 1827. Where am I at? Oh, okay. We're moving on up. We are moving. Yeah, this will be close to 3 hours. Maybe. Sinuses. Okay, somebody said sinuses. That's good. I haven't really been in the chat today. I'll check the chat out after I finish doing all my preparations for the freeze. We got a freeze coming. (1184 AD). On the 17th of the calends of February was an earthquake at midnight and terrible thunder in many places in England. Can you imagine how terrifying that would be? Especially back then, they didn't have all the illuminating, all the street lighting and all that stuff. The city goes dark at night. You're in your home dark. You've turned your oil lamps off. 1184 at midnight, your whole house or building starts shaking. It's an earthquake, and it's already dark. Yeah. Then it's massive peals of thunder. You don't know if it's coming from the sky or coming from the ground. It'd be horrifying. It'd be horrifying. Let's see, 1439315. That's a hell of a handle you got there, man. It says, how does earthquake and thunder connect? I do not get it. Well, welcome to Archaix. I've got many videos showing from scientific reports that thunder and lightning accompany earthquakes all the time, with a lot of very unusual other phenomena as well. Our world is not what you think. That's the purpose of Archaix. Almost every scientific explanation you've ever been given to in your life is a lie. 1185 AD. On the Monday before Easter was the greatest earthquake all over England that the nation ever felt. For the very stones fast in the earth were moved out of their places, stone houses ruined. The sun was eclipsed after 9 o'clock on the calends of May. What? This happened in the month of May. In Calabria was a terrible earthquake. The archbishop with his clerk, whole family, and most of the city were swallowed up. Many castles were overturned. Thousands of people destroyed. A city on the Adriatic Sea with its whole population were swallowed up in the night. Imagine how many cities all over the world, there's not a trace of them. They went straight underground in an earthquake. We know in Archaix, we've documented many of them. Unknown cities, vast cities, especially underneath Mexico, 60, 70 feet underneath Mexico, whole cities with infrastructure, skeletons been found, artifacts. Nobody knows anything about them. There's nothing in the historical record about these cities. In March, a sudden and great inundation, this is 1196 AD, carried down in many places towns, villages, and inhabitants. It's just a small reference, guys. But you don't have any idea how much destruction this one reference could have caused. Enough fodder for photographers 800 years later to take pictures that would be misinterpreted 100 years after that as Tartaria. In March, a sudden and great flood carried down in many places, towns, villages, and inhabitants. Just one picture. And someone's going to swear up and down that whole area was mud flooded. And it was just a normal flood from a river. 1197 AD. On the 4th of the nones of May was a terrible earthquake. It lasted long and did great mischief. That's England. Okay. 1201 AD. On May the 30th, an earthquake and a terrible voice was heard. Achanin, Tyrus, Archaix, and Tripoli were almost entirely ruined. That's 4 cities. Multitudes were killed. 1202 AD. In this King John's reign were strange fish taken on our coasts, armed with helmets and shields like armed knights, only much larger. What in the hell are we reading here? In King John's reign, an army that was fish-like, wearing helmets and carrying shields, literally came out of the ocean onto land. What is being described? At Maidstone in Kent, a monster was killed with lightning. It had a head like an ass, a belly like a man, and all other parts far different from any other creature. An invasion of fish people wearing armor and an isolated incident of a monster. I mean, there's no way to explain any of this other than, creative license or imagination. But these historians back then were trying to document history as it came down to them. They didn't have latitude to make things up. Their contemporaries would have laughed them out of court. So what's really being described? The only thing I can possibly imagine here is that we're dealing with convergence field phenomena. And for some reason, the eyewitnesses were in a tertiary field, or a tertiary field had happened, and these were invading species that came in, and men didn't know how. They had no frames of reference to describe what the hell they were looking at. The name of the book, a picture of the entire cover, is at the beginning of this video. A hurricane or earthquake in May, a comet 18 days. That's 1211 AD. What's interesting is May of 1211 is a Phoenix date. It is a Phoenix date because 1212 is a Phoenix date in the month of May. 1212 got all kinds of things happening. 1212 is on the Phoenix timeline every 138 years. 1212 AD. A terrible earthquake shook Venice and Damascus in Syria. In Cathena, in Sicily, some thousands of people were swept away by a flood of the sea. In Italy fell a shower of hail, each stone as large as a goose egg. In Bavaria, the earth shook a year and a half. The people lived in the open fields, a great battle of crows in Thracia. We've talked about this reference before. A great battle of crows in Thracia means the population of Thracia was dead. That's 1212. That's on the 138-year timeline. Jasmine, what you talking about? Oh, hell no. Somebody misbehaving in the chat? All right, 1213 AD, a great plague in Rome, wherein died 9 out of 10. That's 90% of the population of Rome died in a plague in 1213. Again, 1213, which is Phoenix Phenomenon, it's close to a Phoenix Phenomenon date, could very well be the origin of the skeletons in the catacombs below Rome. There's your explanation right there. Tartaria has nothing to do with it. Oh, I see what you're saying, Jasmine. So, yeah, so here you have an explanation right here in the historical record for all the skeletons that are crammed in the catacombs of Rome, right there. A great plague in Rome. No one has time to bury anybody. If the population of your city is decimated by 90% and you're a part of the 10% surviving, not everybody of that 10% is physically able to help do away with the bodies. So the minority of that 10% that is able, they don't have any time to do anything but fill up every single building that they're going to condemn with the bodies of the dead. That's all that can be done. Paris too. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of plagues that hit Paris. No mystery there. No Tartaria required. 1219 AD. In Nordland, 36,000 men perished by a sudden flood. St. Lawrence's Lake surprisingly breaking out and emptying itself into the Elora and Rodon through, what's that, Gratianople. Gratianople destroyed many thousands of people and marred much land. In England appeared a stupendous great comet, an earthquake. Every one of these incidents could be the origin of the destructions that have been photographed and used by these guys claiming that this was Tartarian destruction. There was a great earthquake as well in Germany, as in other places. Many edifices in Cologne fell down. It shook Lombardy 2 months. That's a 2-month-long earthquake. In Cyprus, 2 cities were overthrown and much people killed. In Italy, none dared lodge all night. None durst lodge all night in towns, but fled to the fields. It continued 2 shocks a day for a fortnight, 2 weeks. That's 28 earthquake shocks. Overthrew many houses and churches. In Brixia, almost the whole town and people were destroyed. Rocks falling from the mountains broke down castles and killed many thousands of men. In Rome, it rained dust mixed with blood. What the hell? That's a Phoenix date. I need to do that. I need to have that date for my Other Dimensions of Phoenix video. My God. 1228 AD. In Friesland, the sea overflowed its banks in 1228 AD, demolishing towns, churches, castles, innumerable, and drowned above 100,000 people. Yeah. Just this one event, just for clarity, to give you guys a little bit of context, just this one event, if the ruins of their infrastructure 800 years ago, because that was exactly 800 years ago, if this event, if we were to go find Friesland and we were to excavate that and somebody was to take pictures, just that one event could provide enough photographic evidence to push the whole Tartarian narrative. And it's just a regular old flood event that just happened to kill a lot of people and bury a lot of stuff and knock down a bunch of infrastructure. So yeah, it's crazy, guys, what Steady pushed out there in the field. Everything but the truth is pushed out there in the field. 1254 AD. Now, for those in Archaix veterans, you know this date. This is the beginning of the 60-year Nemesis X field convergence. January 1st at night, the moon being 8 days old and the sky clear, was clearly and plainly seen in the air a prodigious large ship, which after some time seemed as though the boards and joints were loosed and then vanished. So 1254 is the first year of the 60 years of the Nemesis X object. The last year is 1314 AD. When a great black darkness passes over and eclipses the stars. We've talked about that many times. But this is the beginning of Nemesis X, 1254. 1255 on St. Margaret's Day in July, the moon was eclipsed 4 hours. The sea rose after with very high tides. Rivers were in vast floods from the severe and long rains. A comet appeared. Many high buildings were broken down by force of tempests. 1274, 1275 on September 11th, about midday, was an earthquake which threw down Glastonbury Church with several other mischiefs. Really interesting. It was right around this time, at the top of Glastonbury Tor, that an 8-foot tall human skeleton and a petite female skeleton were found. And the church, wanting to rally the people when they were rebuilding Glastonbury Tor, they reinterred the skeletons and built a monument under the church of Glastonbury and claimed that it was King Arthur and Queen Guinevere. Although it wasn't. They don't know who the skeleton of the man and woman was, but that's what the church said at Glastonbury Tor when the excavations were done in the 13th century AD when this happened. Lacey, they're not going to give this a listen. Lacey's asking if any of the Tartarian channels are going to give this a listen. Hell no, they're not. Hell no. No more than Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock and Jimmy Corsetti are going to stop shilling that younger Dryas. They're not going to. Hell no. They're going to keep doing it. So 1276, this fly is bothering the shit out. I don't know how he got in here. Was a 1276 AD was another general earthquake which threw down several churches. From long and excessive rains came defoliating inundations in many places, so as corns and grass came not to maturity. Grass came not to maturity. Lubeck was burnt, a great flood of the sea, and after it, a great earthquake at Venice. 1279, in May was terrible thunder. Trees were plucked up by the roots in many places by a tempest and removed to others. Men were wrapped up in the air. Lakes were dried. Moving right along. 1280 AD. So great a flood was there in the Sequan that it broke down the bridges at Lyons. An earthquake demolished Rottenburg on the Neckar. Bremen and Hamburg were burnt down. 1286 AD, a comet appeared and a new kind of worms infested Prussia with tails like crabs. Whatever animal they stung, it died within 3 days. Again, man, why is a comet bringing insects? How's that happening? I really want to just break out into song. Yeah, man. Great black nemesis, parthenogenesis. Everybody's waiting for. Everybody's waiting for the dead come home. Yeah, man. That song gave us the business. Parthenogenesis by Shriekback. If you haven't heard that song, you need to, because they're giving us the business about Nemesis X. 1286 AD, the French king waging war against Aragon, an unheard of disease suddenly fell on his army. From the corruption of the air and swarm of flies, which sat down on their meat, many were taken with a fever. The greatest part of the army died. Again, we have this intervention that literally stops a historical event from happening. Yeah. What was the historical event? The French king was about to take Aragon in Spain. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. Why? Because somebody in the sky sent infected bugs on the army and it killed them. It's terrible. All right. So we're now at 1287. I should have turned my notifications off because this is really aggravating me. That's Dad's fault. He put me on some weird group text, so every single person answers that text. I know what it is. I ain't dumb. They want me to get relaxed, get on some bourbon, and they want to play poker. What do you think they're going to do? They want to take my money. That's what it is. I ain't dumb, Dad. Let's see. 1287 AD. 15 islands in Selandia were drowned by a flood of the sea, and with them 15,000 people. That's no small amount. An earthquake at Rome, which killed all the cardinals, met in the conclave to elect a new pope. How come we don't hear about this stuff in the papal histories? How come there's no video about this on YouTube? In 1287 AD, all the cardinals of Rome are in conclave to elect a new pope. That is so crazy. And an earthquake in Rome collapses the entire building and kills all the cardinals. This is supposed to be the holiest place on earth, isn't it? Or did the master of the simulacrum finally get tired of what was going on with those altar boys? Maybe the prayers of the women that were trapped in the nunneries were finally heard. But I don't believe in coincidence. Didn't kill a cardinal, killed every single cardinal before they could elect a pope. Yeah, man. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you might want to do a little research why the rooms of nunneries where the women sleep were called cells. They're still called cells today. The sea from the Humber to Yarmouth broke into the land, overflowing for 3 or 4 leagues in breadth, overthrowing buildings, drowning people and cattle. It came so suddenly that there was no avoiding it. It laid the whole fins of Lincolnshire under water. You British in there in the chat, did y'all even know this happened? This is huge. Man, England has been effed off multiple times. You guys have infrastructure on top of infrastructure on top of infrastructure. You have layers of buildings and cities all at different time periods. I can imagine going through some of the older cities like York in England. I can imagine that one area of the street that's really high is like 300 years old, all the shops and all that. And then if you really study it and you go to a lower area of York, you're in an area that's 800 years old, and it wasn't necessary to rebuild over it like the 300-year part, which got whole elevations of London would be the same thing. Just it's crazy, man. All these destructions that have happened, just crazy. I bet there's all kinds of things to find in the UK So we're at third. Okay, now we're in the period of the Great Black Death Plague that killed a third of the human race. If it was so favorable as to leave a third part of men alive in some places, this is the early 14th century BC. I mean AD. In others, it took 15 out of 16. That's a lot. That's more than 90%. 15 out of 16. In more, it utterly extirpated the human race. Whole cities died and laid waste some places, as Archaix in the eastern parts died in 1 year 23,840,000 people. The Venetians lost 100,000 people. In Florence died in 1 year 60,000 people. In Germany died 1,244,000 people. One of the things about the Tartaria narrative is they're always trying to push that the populations couldn't support the structures that we're seeing. You're full of shit. Full of shit. There's so many people alive back then. The structures that we have today were not only built, but they were rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt and repaired and restructured and rebuilt and refurbished over and over and over again. It's crazy. It's insane what's being claimed in order to push a bogus theory. It's insane. Yeah. Because the populations that are mentioned here, like Venice losing 100,000 people, Venice continued and later thrived and built more buildings. Yeah, it's crazy, man. There weren't enough people. I hear that with the Tartaria guys all the time. There weren't enough people to build all that. Hell, the star forts weren't even under construction yet. We're in 1347. The first of the star forts are just now appearing. I got a whole video on star forts, show you the whole history of them. Yeah, they're just now appearing. They didn't even exist 100 years before this at all. And the ones that are appearing in right here in 1340s are very primitive to the ones that were built 100 years later. Yeah. Man, these are huge populations. You forget, guys, 250 men working from sun up to sundown, working 6 days a week. There's a massive amount of labor that they can do. You just don't know unless you've done it. I've done it. I've lived it. I was forced to live it. But you know what? It's people just don't know, man. They make stupid claims. They don't think their claims through. They just don't understand, man. How fast infrastructure can be laid, how fast cities can be built. Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of those Tartaria guys talking about the most famous building in New York, the Cheese Wedge building, the Fuller building. It's called Flatiron Building. It was built by the Fuller Construction Company. It's 21 stories. It's the world's first skyscraper. It's a cheese wedge right there on Fifth Avenue. You guys know it. It's famous. And they're always showing camera angled views of it being super badass and all the other buildings being short around it because that's the way it was in 1901, in 1902 when it was being constructed. And these Tartaria guys are always talking about, man, this was found. Nobody built this. Look at the size of this. Well, when you look at the size of it compared to now, it's tiny compared to the buildings in New York that are huge. It's tiny, 21 stories, little. However, in my own videos on the 1800s, I show you guys, they didn't do their homework because that corner where that building, the Fuller building, they're claiming was found, and there's no way that they could have built it in 1901 and finished it in 1902. I called bullshit. And I showed the black and white photos from 1896 where that lot, where that Fuller 21-story building was, that building wasn't there. And instead there was like a fish taco stand structure, a wooden shack structure was on that corner. And you can't mistake it in 1896. It's just stupid what's being claimed. All these buildings been found and all that. And then and because it's dirt all around, they don't even understand the concept of how much shit 10,000 horses can lay down in a 2-week period. You don't even have a clue. Yeah, it's just dumb what people promote today. It's just getting on my nerves because I get so many emails of people asking me, Jason, man, you this video you did blew my mind and it makes total sense. But when the Tartarians, man, shut up. Quit sending me emails about Tartarians. Yeah, quit trying to merge the Archaix material with all this clown shit. I don't want to hear it no more. I'm done with it. Absolutely done with it. I'm tired of thinking for people. It's really stressful how idiotic the race, and by race I mean humans, have become. I'm really wondering if social media is absolutely packed now with vax injured souls and don't even realize how dumb they are. And that's scary. That's real scary. But anyway, the Venetians lost 100,000 men. Let's see, in Norwich died from January the 1st. I think that's 1st to July. It gets really bad here. May 2,000 people died a week in London. Dorsetshire spread to Devon, Somersetshire. Bristol, England. There's that. Is that Gloucester? You guys in the UK got these weird ass. I know how to say Oxford. I know how to say London. Okay, yeah, I'm at 2,000 people a day dying. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So crazy. All right. What? Okay, this same year, this Black Death. And to finish the tragedy, from the pestilentiousness of the water, even to the fishes, was trumped up the story of the Jews poisoning all the springs in England. We said it began at Cathay in Asia, that's India, by reason of an igneous vapor or sulfurous fire breaking forth from the earth or falling from heaven, which utterly consumed men, beasts, houses, stones, and trees to the very ground, and stretched forward, rolling along in smoking balls of stinking pestilential fire. So he's giving explanations as to the origin of the great Black Death plague that killed a third of Europe. Now, prior to this event, there was already an accusation laid on the Jews for poisoning wells in different areas of Europe where they have been caught doing that in the past. He's explaining that explanation, which readily came to a bunch of Europeans, cannot be true about the Black Death plague because it started in India, Cathay, all over China, and the spreading of the Black Death wasn't from person to person. It was something in the air, and the whole world got infected. Now, this is a 300-year-old explanation. I have shown you other explanations from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance period where it was explained that although today you're gaslit by uniformitarian explanations saying that it was infected rats on ships that spread the deal, Europeans themselves said that the Great Black Death plague appeared far in the interior, away from ships and in communities that had no contact with the sea. The historians of the time, the eyewitness accounts from the 1300s of the Great Black Death plague don't say anything about Jews. They don't say anything about rats on ships. They say that cigar-shaped appendages appeared in the sky and passed over the forests of Europe, and they opened their bellies and deposited decomposing body parts of forest animals that were infected. And they sprayed out their asses from the cigar-shaped deals, mists. And everywhere the mist fell, people got sick and died. This is the eyewitness accounts. Don't listen to the uniformitarian gaslighters, the historians that are alive today trying to rewrite history based off uniformitarian concepts that they've been trained to believe. They may not think they're lying. They're just coming up with explanations because they think the rest of the human species is too stupid to understand what could have really happened. This is the eyewitness reports about the cigar-shaped objects. They claimed it was like forest animals were all put into a blender and then allowed to decompose in an environment, and then their body parts, putrid infected body parts, were just dumped in different areas, and mist was poured out the back of the cigar-shaped objects, poisoning whole populations. This is the historical record. So, for the Great Black Death Plague. So, this is still Great Black Death Plague. There fell down millions of young serpents and other venomous insects. In countries remote from the fiery eruption were found prodigious multitudes of large vermin with tails and 8 short legs, all over black, some living and others dead. This is all during the Great Black Death period. Why are little insects all raining from the sky? We've covered that topic many, many times. Okay, the same time at Corinth and Achaia, an earthquake swallowed many cities, castles, towns, and mountains in Cyprus or Cypria were thrown together in one and stopped the courses of rivers. At Naples, while the parson was preaching, while the parson was preaching, the earthquake overthrew and swallowed the church, city, inhabitants, all but one man. Where have we seen that before? Where have we seen this exact scenario? It's almost as if the oversoul has a sense of humor. Where have we seen this before? 1902. The island of Saint Martinique in the French Caribbean. The city was Saint Pierre. The volcano was Mount Pelée. Just days before, the Catholic priests assembled the people and did a Protestant Bible burning ceremony. They rounded up all the Christian Protestant Bibles, because in the Catholic faith, really the people aren't supposed to have a Bible. They're supposed to come to Mass and then listen to whatever parts the priest reads to them. Well, the Catholics of Saint Pierre burned all the Protestant Bibles in 1902 in the month of May. 3 days later, Mount Pelée exploded, killed over 30,000 people instantly, capsized the ships in the harbor, and one single guy survived, who was in a dungeon cell sentenced to die. When he was rescued, the rescuers, finding out who Albinus was and that he was sentenced to die, they overturned his sentence, because they thought, if God saw fit for a man condemned to die to actually survive when the entire city of his condemners were dead, then it was all the evidence that they needed that he should be allowed to live. So they rescued him, and he had a long life after that. But that was 1902. Here it happened again, right there. As the parson was preaching, the earthquake overthrew and swallowed the church. It swallowed the city. It swallowed all the inhabitants, and only one man survived in the city. Yep, he's probably one of the only ones that wasn't turning a blind eye to what that parson was really up to. There it is. You can't make this shit up. History is amazing, guys. I tell people all the time, and I know you guys follow me, so you already know, but there's so many people who just need to understand the historical record is already compelling and absolutely packed with amazing stories that we could spend the rest of our lives going through. So many ancient texts that are just baffling and awesome that we don't need to make shit up. We don't need to make all this BS up. There's so much to go through. That's why I'm always telling you, I always have 500 more videos in me. It will never end. I cannot go through all the records that exist in my own lifetime. I can't do it. That's why when I tell you that, I'm stating a fact. I'm not making a promise. I'm stating a fact. I still have 500 videos left in me every single time. 1356. In Ireland was a great earthquake, and lots of people, demolition of cities, devastation of countries and several nations, chiefly in Spain, Germany, April, May, and June. What? You know what else happened in 1356? An earthquake destroyed Cairo, damaged the Great Pyramid. And when the local Muslims saw all that loose white Tura limestone slide off the faces of the Great Pyramid in that earthquake, they went ahead and quarried all that stone. That's why there's only very, very little of that is left on the Great Pyramid. That was 1356. May the 21st, 1380, 81 or 82. About 1 o'clock in the afternoon was a great earthquake, chiefly in Kent. This is the UK, which so shook several churches that some were overturned. May the 24th, early in the morning, was another earthquake, or a waterquake, giving a violent shock that it made ships in the harbor beat against one another, so as several of them was much damaged and people much frightened. There broke out in Avignon, I guess that's how you pronounce it, and spread into Savoy, Piedmont, Italy, Greece, Germany, Britain, France, Aragon, and traveled all the eastern and western kingdoms, a general and a severe pestilence. Why is earthquake activity always linked to plagues? How is it possible? What is the connection? It's always happening. 1385, May 3rd, month of May again, an earthquake. This month, a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Interesting. July, another earthquake. 1389, in April, a fiery dragon in the air was seen in many parts of England, while the king was in Sheen in July. In his court were such swarms of flies and gnats skirmishing with one another that in the end their killed were swept away with brooms, and bushels were filled with them. That's a lot of insects. A lot of insects for such a northern hemisphere, northern latitude area. The UK is nowhere near the equator. It's nowhere near the tropics. It's a lot of insects. 1391, July 9th, the sun was blood red till sunset. For 6 weeks after, great thick dark clouds. At the same time was a great mortality over all England, especially in Norfolk. In York died 1,100 people. York is always getting it, man. I wonder how many Yorkshirites are in the chat. I know there's a few. A warm south wind and great corruption of the air all this summer of 1406. Hence, such a plague of men's bodies in city and country as had not been known long before. Many whole families died. In London died 30,000 people. So before I go on to the next, well, we're 2/3 the way done. We may be more than that. What is this? This is 1857. Let me look real quick. This is a screenshot 1857. I'm going to find out for you where we are. If I can open up the right file. Oh, it's way up here. All right, let's see here. Still got a ways to go, but we've covered quite a bit. Yeah. Yeah, man. So I hope you guys aren't getting too impatient, because yeah, we're 2/3 the way done. I still have a third of the way to go. I told you I documented a lot. I went through this. I reread this whole book in order to put this presentation together. I had to, because I'm isolating totally different stuff than I isolated just in my merry month of May. So, oh, we got some Yorkshire in here. All right. So what What is so compelling about this catalog of destructions? Why is this so compelling? First of all, it's backed up by the archaeological record. You can go to Germany and you can look it up the municipal records and you'll find out how many times Germany has been destroyed different times. You can do the same thing for Vienna. You can do the same thing for New York City. You can do it for London. You can do it for York. My point is this. If the archaeological record shows that all these places have been destroyed and the historical record is literally telling us when these events occurred, when was there a 1,000-year millennial reign of peace and plenty? When did that happen? How did we start Satan's little season in 1776? If you can't even show me 1,000 years where all this terrible, murderous, natural disaster, plagues, corruption, where was Lord Jesus ruling a millennial kingdom from the camp of the saints when all this shit was happening? When? Because we started this at 526 AD. There is more historical documentation for the period of the 1st century AD, 2nd century, 3rd century, the development of Christianity, the hijacking of the Gnostic principles into Christianity, the demonizing of Gnosticism as Christianity is formalized and doctrines are created, and then the science of apologetics becomes the war front of Christianity against the very people that they were stealing their material from, the Gnostics. We have that fully documented. It is so critical to understand the first 500 years of the AD system, Anno Domini. The 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and 5th century are so well documented. We have so much source materials. We have so much historical data backed by archaeology. We have it. Things don't get crazy till the Dark Ages. Then we have a dearth of materials, really weird shit in Dark Ages, but it's not what we've been told. We have archaeology for the Dark Ages, and I've showed it to you. It's some really weird shit. But it doesn't have room for a 1,000-year period when Jesus and the saints were ruling securely over the millennial reign. There's nowhere in history it fits. It is the dumbest theory I've ever seen promulgated across YouTube. And it is merging strongly with Tartaria narrative. And it is the reason I have lost a lot of respect for the guys that pushed the Tartaria narrative. Initially, for years on Archaix, I was divorced from it, didn't care about it. You do your thing and all that. But it's become very obvious to me that this narrative, this intelligence agency-backed BS narrative, is being promoted strongly in the field, and now these concepts are intermingled. Satan's little season and Tartaria is now basically one and the same belief system. So I can't ignore Tartaria anymore. I have to include it. I have to include its ridiculousness with the Satan's little season narrative. And anytime JT loves JC, the main guy promoting this, wants to come on my channel and discuss these, we can have a friendly discussion. You're not going to feel it's friendly with all the data that's going to come out of my mouth and all the hard questions. But we can have a friendly discussion about it. But there's no way in hell that 1,000-year millennial reign could be true with all of this historically documented stuff that is supported in the archaeological record. Every single city in Europe, and by extension the world, has records or memories of all these destructions that they've gone through. And nowhere in any of those memories was there a 1,000-year hiatus, ever. Never. Does not exist. Guys, man, grown men should be embarrassed about the things that they've accepted to be true. Yeah, that you fell for something isn't embarrassing. That you steadily follow it despite the myriads of data points that show it's untrue is embarrassing. That's embarrassing. So let's continue on now. Oh, my stomach's growling. I totally miscalculated the length of this video. So this is 1406. A warm south wind and great corruption of the air all this summer. Hence, such a plague on men's bodies in city and country as had not been known long before. Many whole families died. In London died 30,000 people. Well, that means London had a lot of people. 1456. Italy and Naples were shaken by an earthquake wherein perished 40,000 people. A comet all June in Spain and in Poland all summer. Many prodigies were seen in Italy. You know what also was seen in Italy in 1456? Because I have this in Chronicon. That earthquake, a whole mountain was split open, and people were amazed to see a full wooden ship inside a mountain. Right. 3 times in the historical record, full wooden ships have been found underneath or inside mountains. That's one year it happened too, 1456. Moving on, 1485. Long time there were continual rains, and great moisture swelled rivers, but especially the Severn, so high for 14 days that it overflowed the whole country. It drowned many people in their beds, overturned houses, carried about children swimming in their cradles, drowned beasts gazing on the hills. 1485. I'm going to move a little faster, but we have some real mind explosions coming up, especially one about eclipses. Let's see, 1495, 1494, the city of Milan, lightning fired their magazine of powder, which they had taken out to send to other places, which demolished the gate over it. Listen, they pulled out their powder magazines. This is probably a Star Fort construction. They pulled their powder magazines out and they were going to distribute it to other fortresses. But lightning from the sky hit the powder magazine, blew up. This is what happened when it blew up. Demolished the gate over it and the castle, and the whole city shook. Many people were slain by the fall of stones and the ruin of the walls. 500 men were killed at their recreations on the castle green. Imagine a military fortress. 500 cadets are out there in the field doing their exercises. A boom over here kills all these people. All 500 of these men dead. Huge rocks and pieces of the fortress go in all different directions and kill a bunch of people in the city. A bolt of lightning hit the powder magazine when they pulled it out to distribute it. Again, who's in control, man? Who's making these executive decisions? How much of a setback was that for Italy or Spain when that happened? It's crazy, man. A lightning bolt set off the powder magazine. 1506. There were seen in the night at Yeovil 3 suns in the midst of the firmament, and many clouds about them, with most frightful thunder and lightnings. Monsters were produced in all countries. In the territory of Archaix were seen great companies of armed men on mighty horses, with a terrible noise of drums and trumpets. If monsters appeared all over the world in 1506, we have a tertiary field phenomenon here. (1509). September 14th, an earthquake at Constantinople and the countries thereabout. It demolished a great part of the city walls, stately buildings, and slew 13,000 people. It lasted a month with very little intermission. After it came a plague which almost depopulated the city. This is in Turkish histories. The source is Turkish histories. 1514, the plague raged this year in Tournai and killed 140,000 people. Guys, we've been lied to about the population. We were very, very populated. I've showed you in Archaix many historical texts of wars and battles which involved hundreds of thousands of men on each side of the battlefield. The uniformitarian view of history in our encyclopedia books, it always minimizes everything down to its lowest common denominators. We are lied to across the board about how populated the ancient world was. Massive populations. 1521. A great dearth and mortality in England, and great inundations of the sea, which driving back the rivers, they overflowed all their banks, overwhelmed 72 villages, and drowned above 100,000 people, and very much cattle. That's England again. Man, you guys have had it bad, man. You guys have had it bad. 1528. This describes a plague that killed a lot of people. And I found it very interesting that in this plague that killed a lot of people, he literally says, no Jews died of it. Some few women and old people died of it, but it made sad havoc of children and youth, and those of the richer sort chiefly. All had a sudden and great loss of strength. Man, that sounds like COVID. Man, all of a sudden your strength's just gone. Man, it sounds like microwave radiation. Let's see. 1531. In Lisbon, 1,400 houses were overthrown by an earthquake and 600 more so shaken that they were ready to fall. So it's 2,000 houses. Many churches were cast down. It's an earthquake in Lisbon, Portugal. That is not the big destruction. Lisbon would be destroyed 2 more times after this, way worse than this. 1551, a great multitude of people and cattle were drowned by a terrible tempest, the clouds suddenly dissolving and the waters pouring down amain with such strange and stupendous violence that the massive walls of many cities, diverse vineyards and fair houses were totally destroyed and ruined. 1551. 1555-56. Year was a great flood in the south of Languedoc, with so dreadful a tempest that people imagined it was the last day. Vigmere, that's the author. The rapid descent of the waters about Nismus removed different heaps and mountains of ground and rent and tore up many other places, by which was discovered much gold and silver coins, plate, and other valuable vessels, supposed to be hid in the Gothic invasions. Isn't that interesting? 1,000 years after the people in England were hiding their gold and silver and valuables because of the invading Goths. Look at that. That's so crazy. No, that's France. Excuse me. But yeah, 1,000 years after the invasion of the Goths, all this stuff was found because of a natural disaster. In the 4th year of Queen Elizabeth's 1562 reign, men being sent for the safeguard of New Haven, there broke out such a plague amongst them that the streets lay full of dead corpses, the living not being able to bury the multitude of the dead. From thence this year the soldiers brought the infection into England, whereof died within the bills of mortality 20,136 people. So there's a lot of references to bills of mortality. The bills of mortality is not the death toll of the city. The bills of mortality are those who died of the plague. 1575. In February, the earth began to open at 6 o'clock in the evening, and a hill with a rock under it, making it first a great bellowing noise, which was heard a great way off, lifted itself up at a great height, and began to travel, bearing along with it the trees. Listen, guys, listen to what it's talking about. An area of the earth suddenly lifted high into the air and then moved across the ground. Whale lifted itself at a great height and began to travel, bearing along with it the trees that grew upon it, the sheepfolds, the flocks of sheep, abiding there at the same time. So it carried the sheep with it. In the place from whence it moved, it left a gaping distance 40 feet wide and 40 ells long. The whole field was about 20 acres. Passing along, it overthrew a chapel standing in its way, removed a yew tree growing in the churchyard from the west to the east with like force. It thrust before it highways, houses, and trees. It made tilled ground pasture and turned pasture into tillage. Having thus walked from Saturday evening till Monday noon, it then rested. What? WTF? Dark City all over again. A piece of land just elevated and then shot across at walking speed for like 2 or 3 days before it came back down. All the sheep were fine. What? What in the hell? What in the hell, man? I'll never forget that account in Pliny, Natural History, where that estate corkscrewed in Italy and just chained and it just turned around east to west. It's crazy. In Grand Cairo, 500,000 people died of the plague. In 6 or 7 months' time. It came into Egypt from Barbary. It's a lot of people. That's 500,000 people died in Egypt from the plague. 1590, September the 15th, a terrible earthquake which shook Hungary, Vienna, and many places in Bohemia, Moravia. Many buildings in the first fell down. Yeah, look at this. The citation is Dressier Millinar, page 552. You can't make this shit up. Sometimes I wonder if these ancient chronographers just gave us clues. So September the 15th, terrible earthquake. That's crazy, man. Yeah, a lot of those Tartaria pictures could be ruins from this very destruction in Hungary, in Vienna, in Bohemia, in Moravia. A lot of these old European places that show other structures pancaked in mud underneath newer structures could be from this very event right here. No Tartarians required. It's just destructions and earthquakes in the historical record. So great was the famine among the Turks, 1595, in Hungary for 3 years, that their Tartar women who followed the camp were forced to roast their own children and eat them. That's from Turkish Histories. Yeah, the Tartars were absorbed into the Turks. Pegu, one of the richest and fruitfulest countries of the world, yet its metropolis, lately replenished with millions of inhabitants, was wasted by a terrible famine from war that scarce 7,000 men, women, and children were left alive, and these were fed on human flesh. Parents ate children, and children ate parents. The stronger ate up the weaker. That's terrible. That's 1598. Again, it literally said the population was in the millions. 1599. In Lisbon and Spain died 70,000 people of the plague. Here's another one. Your catacombs right here. Catacombs filled with skeletons. No Tartarians required. They shoved those bodies down there because it was a plague. They were plague ridden. They have time to bury the dead. This ain't Monty Python. Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead. Excuse me, sir, but I'm not dead yet. Hit that dude in the head with a hammer. Boom. Yeah, man. You guys seen the movie Monty Python and the Holy Grail? So we have 1600 AD. A raging fever attended with an insatiable thirst, which nothing but the Christian blood could quench. And delirium. Listen to this. Cursing a book called the Bible and all its lay readers and believers, talking of infallibility, succession, heresy, to quench their thirst, were killed in Italy, Spain, France, England, and Flanders. 39 princes, 148 earls, 235 barons, 147,518 nobles, 700,000 common people. In all, 848,000 people killed. Yet still, they were thirsty after all this blood. It's talking about the Turks, the Turkish invasions against Europe, and their hatred for the people of the book, which is the Bible. Yeah, that's it. They hated the people of the Bible, Christianity, Christian Europeans. This is the year 1600, Turkish invasion. 1606, there died of the plague in London 68,596 people. But London continued just fine. London was superpopulated just 60 years later when the Great Fire happened. So, yeah, so this is populations in the ancient world were much larger than we've been led to believe. The plague raged at Gessena and in Constantinople. So great was the contagion for 5 months that in that time died 200,000 people. They commonly carried out 12 or 1,500 dead a day. Man, 1620. Now this is important because this is a book that's 300 years old. But it's telling us things that happened. This is crazy, guys. It's telling us things that happened only 100 years before this book was finished. This is 1620. The reason this is important is because we are told in European history, we are told in American history that 1620 was the great date that, America, the Europeans sailed over in the Mayflower to America, the Pilgrims, and we're given this picture that all things were, hunky dory and European, and they just went over, but that's not the backstory. What I'm saying, I'm about to read this to you. What I'm saying is the real reason why Europeans founded the 13 English colonies, which were in Manhattan Island of the Dutch, may not be true. The real reason might have been we may have been looking for an escape from the Turks. Because for 600 years, half of Europe had been sold into slavery. White people have been slaves for a long period of time by Muslim overlords. And all of this has been washed under the rug. Many people can tell you about it. I'm pretty sure Ralph Ellis can go pretty deep on this. But for 600 years, white people were parceled out. During times of famine, white people were parceled out to be put on the menu. White females were in harems and sex slaves. When you have 200,000 rich Muslims running different areas of the Mediterranean and European world, and every one of those 200,000 Muslims have their own harem, and each harem has many females, you can add it up yourself and see just how many of these Nordic females. That's the ones that were highly prized. The most highly prized females were the blue-eyed, green-eyed, and blonde-haired, flaxen. They would call them flaxen back then. Haired females, Caucasian females. Those went for the highest prices, and children went for the highest prices. The boys had it really bad. I'm not saying the girls had it good, but they didn't have to do what the guys did. The guys had it really bad. Some of them were forcibly eunuchs and their shit was cut off. This is 600 years of European history that's not told to you. And a lot of times, the guys, have you ever seen Game of Thrones? Those of you who have seen Game of Thrones, do you remember the Immortals? The army of the Immortals, where they were castrated and all they could think about was warfare and fighting. Okay, well, that's what was done to the boys. The boys of Europe, what the Muslims would do is create special corps called Janissaries. These Janissaries were Caucasians who were taught Islam, taught Arabic, taught Saracen fighting skills and all that. They were taught to think and believe in Islam. They were taught to be fanatics, and they were taught to hate Europeans, and they were Europeans. So they were taught to hate their own people, and they were put on the front lines of all the Muslim wars and the Crusades. So the first people, oftentimes in the Crusader Wars, the white Europeans who had borrowed from Jewish banks and put up their states up against the Jewish banks to go fight on Muslim battlefields, the first point of contact in the battles, and often they were killed by their own kin. They were killed by white Europeans who looked, act, and sounded just like Muslims because they were brainwashed into those Janissaries. All this history has been, all the slave trade, all this stuff. Most people know. Everybody talking about blacks being enslaved. They don't even know. Blacks don't have a clue what they're talking about when it comes to slavery. White people freed the slaves in America. They have no idea what they're talking about. It's a 600 years of provable, verifiable history of white people, being totally enslaved, and it was by the Turks and Islam, and the Jews were in charge of the entire affair. They ran both sides of the entire slave industry, every bit of it. 1620, when the Mayflower goes to North America, founds Jamestown, the Turks saw a surprising meteor at Medina, their prophet's burying place, which continued 3 weeks together. September the 20th, there fell a great tempest, attended with a fearful thunder about midnight. When the clouds were dispersed and the sky clear, the following was the most legible in the firmament. In Arabic characters in the sky, they claim it says, "Why will ye believe in lies?" And between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, there appeared a woman, white, compassed about with the sun, having a cheerful countenance and a book in her hand. And over against her were armies of Turks, Persians, Arabians, and in battle array, ready to charge her. But she, keeping her station, only opened the book. At the sight whereof the armies fled, and presently all the lamps about Muhammad's tomb were put out. This event was a vision that was supposed to have scared the shit out of the Muslims when they were about to when the Turks were about to make another inroad into Europe, going deeper into Europe. Supposedly they saw a vision, and in that vision it was a female, and they heard in Arabic the voice, "Why will ye believe in lies?" And they mistook the book as being the Quran, but when she opened it, it was the Bible, and all the Muslim armies that were in the vision were dispersed as soon as she opened the book. And to the Muslim Turks, they took that as an omen that, oh shit, we may be going too far, because if we go on this expedition, it looks like the people of the book, Christianity, are going to disperse our armies. So this is 1620 when America is colonized by the deal. So you have to understand, I don't know if that vision ever happened. I'm just telling you what the historical record says. This is an account out of the Turkish histories. So it's again, who is in the sky making these moves? It's like a rock that falls between two armies and dictates the outcome of events. Who's making the moves? Oh, just so you know, don't think I'm making it up. There it is at the bottom. The source material is Turkish histories. 1627 AD. An earthquake in England, in Apulia, 16,000 souls were lost to great floods. 1628 or 1629, the plague raged all over France. In Apulia, 17,000 people lost by an earthquake. 1631, a terrible earthquake at Naples, Italy. Some places, after a long, horrible bellowing, threw out frightful streams of fire, which fell into the Adriatic Sea. The like happened in February 1632. To the inexpressible lots of neighboring places about, in men and women, children, cattle, and houses. Terrible earthquake. There it is. All these events could be in real photos documented by people that are now being used to promote this Tartaria shit. An earthquake in England, which shook this is 1634, which shook London. Another earthquake in England. What the hell? It's crazy. A marsh there boiled up black waters. At Touraine, water turned to blood. 1648, in the air in Yorkshire were seen two armies discharging and shooting one against the other. And after a long and obstinate action, the northern army vanished. What were they seeing in the sky? 1656, this is an Anno Domini Phoenix year. 1656 is divisible by 138. 1656 of the old world's calendar, the world was destroyed in a flood. The vapor canopy fell the day the sky fell. In 1656 of the Anno Domini calendar that we're in today, in the summer, the plague raged in Naples, so that 6,000 died in a day. Now, it was the same time so raged in all Turkish Candia that the inhabitants abandoned several towns and left them desolate. It at the same time afflicted Italy, Rome, and Genoa. At Benevento in November, 9,000 inhabitants, 8,500 died of it. These are like short notes, but you get the gist. This is still in 1656. In December, a river in Derbyshire, which had a causeway over it to turn the water to a mill, suddenly above the causeway, the water fell 6 foot. Oh, under the causeway, the surface of the water fell 6 foot below the dam running away. The river for a space was dry for some miles. Shortly after, there was an earthquake in, Leicestershire? I don't get me the line. And Nottinghamshire, whatever, neighboring places. You Brits with your weird, whatever it is. 1661. No, 1663. The whole Venetian territories were seized this year with a malignant epidemic, which infected 60,000 people. They began with horror and a fever. Some died quickly and the rest recovered. It proceeded from monstrous and incredible numbers of small worms. What again are worms doing infecting populations? This year and the following, the livers of all sheep, oxen, deer, hares were only bags of worms like leeches, and often the lungs also. Out of 3,000 sheep, not 40 were left to live. Only old bullocks and sheep escaped, for all the young and middle-aged died of this plague. Yeah, it was in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance period. It was common when things died by unknown means, they would cut them open and they would examine them. And in this, they found that all their livers were full of worms. All right, let's see. What year was this? 1667. Other symptoms besides these diversified in sundry constitutions, as seizure with horror, trembling, loathing, and vomiting, first of phlegm, then of bile, thirst yet loath to drink, dry tongue, thirst, headache, watchings, drowsiness in some, pain of the loins. I don't want to read all this shit. I don't know why I marked it yellow. But in others, weakness. Many Jews died of this. That's interesting. Many Jews died of this, but few others. This is so interesting to me. You would think that a pathogen would infect all humans the same, but it doesn't. We have already seen from the historical record in this one document that there was a plague, and that no Jews were affected, to the point that the author had to mention it. So many people died, but no Jews were affected. Then in this one, it's here's a badass plague, and he just read off all the symptoms, and they sound horrible, and the only people affected were Jews. That's crazy. That is crazy. Kind of makes you wonder if we are all the same or not. How are we different? In 1668 was a great earthquake in Europe and Asia. March the 10th appeared a comet in Italy and Portugal with a stupendous tail. Same year. The top of Etna is covered with snow, ashes, and cinders. The greater time there is between its eruptions, the longer, terrible, and more pernicious is the next eruption. This is beautiful right here. This is badass. In 2600, Janus's posterity. Let me get my phone out. I'm gonna tell you what year that was. Oh my God. How did I lose a phone? There it is. It was right here. All right. 2600. So 2600 Annus Mundi minus 1656, which is the Great Flood in 2239 BC, is 944 years. Therefore, 2239 BC minus 944 is 1295 BC. So in 1295 BC, Janus's descendants traveled in a quest of a new colony. They entered Sicily during a great eruption of this mountain, which so frightened them that they quickly left the island. The like was the same fate as the Sicani a short time after, in the year 3182. What? He said 3180, guys, but I'm going to tell you now, he's wrong. It's 3182, which is a famous year in the Anno Domini, in the Annus Mundi system. 3182 is our year 713 BC, when the year changed from 360 days to 365, and there was cataclysms. There's all kinds of fallout all over the world, and it's when the moon for over 40 days quit moving in the way that it was expected to move. The moon became so erratic that every civilization lost their faith in lunar calendars and adopted solar calendars. So anyway, we'll get to that. I have a whole video coming up on that. But 3182 Anno Mundi is 713 BC. And then for 400 years, it's talking about the history of Mount Etna and its eruptions. So it would have erupted in 3182. That is so badass. Doesn't have much to do with it doesn't have much to do with our presentation today, but it was something in an old book that we just can't ignore. 1670, there was an earthquake in New England. So for all those crying and talking about these old historical books don't give you any value, take into consideration how many YouTube channels are trying to tell you that America didn't exist 200 years ago, that everything is fake and all this stuff. Here is a book that's 300 years old that literally mentions New England in 1670. (1682) May the 12th this year were 3 earthquakes in the town and neighborhood of the Prince Palatine. They shook all France, Switzerland, and part of Germany. Every night for 4 nights before the earthquake, flames like ignis fatuus appeared on some mountains. A noise like thunder and flames often burst out of the earth of a sulfurous scent during the earthquake. Interesting. So this is the same thing that they record in South America, that the tops of the Andes often give off a blue glow right before an earthquake. 1686, in the month of May, there fell at Lisle a storm of prodigious hail, some stones above a pound weight. People broke one that had brown matter in it. threw it in the fire, and it gave an explosion and report. So we have carbonaceous material falling from the sky in the form of hail. That is incendiary. Isn't that odd? The hell's falling out the sky. 1687. This is a cross-calendrical parallel. 1687 AD is very interesting because of what happened in this year that mirrors what happened in 1687 BC, the Ogygian deluge. Floodwaters destroyed stuff all over the world in 1687 BC. Very well documented. So well documented that I have 5 distinct videos all about that one date and everything that happened in 1687 BC. The Ogygian deluge is every bit as bad as the Noahic deluge. So the constitution of this year being very rainy. What? It's just like 1687 BC. Down here in summer, the rivers were terribly flooded. Brooks overflowed their banks. Extraordinary tempests and rains demolished houses and buildings. Torrents carried along with them and drowned multitudes of people. Sounds just like the Ogygian deluge. 1687 AD continued. All right, on Monday morning was a terrible shock of an earthquake with a horrible roaring of the sea at Lima in Peru. Many houses fell and killed several people. At 5 o'clock was the second, and at 6 the greatest of all. The sea bellowed, swelled, and overflowed. This city was wholly overthrown. Several seaports were flooded. By the flood, which carried off several ships 9 miles into the land, much people and cattle were drowned. At one place near the seaside were found 5,000 dead bodies, and more were daily cast up, so that at the last the number of the dead was not known. South America was a massive destruction in 1687 BC in the Ogygian cataclysm, as I've shown in my books and on my channel. So this is a perfect cross-calendrical parallel. 1688 in February, the inhabitants of Jamaica expect an earthquake yearly, especially after the great rains. At 8 that morning were 3 shocks of an earthquake in 1 minute. The same instant was a hurricane at sea. In the earthquake, the ground rose like the sea in a wave, which went northward in the island. High brick or stone houses suffered most by it. It was felt over the whole island and the sea. Can you imagine being on an island that you think is on solid ground? And when there's a hurricane approaching, there's an earthquake, and your island rolls like a giant wave in the ocean? If I survived that, I would live the rest of my life as far away from that island as possible. Yeah, it defies everything. It's Dark City. It's Dark City all over. 1693. During an eclipse of the moon, January the 21st, 1693, most that were sick died while the moon was eclipsed. I find the like observed on another occasion in Paris, where during an eclipse of the sun, the greatest care was necessary to preserve the sick. And as the sun shone out, they recovered. Are you paying attention? A 300-year-old book detailing something that happened over like almost 400 years ago, or 350 years ago, during an eclipse of the moon, January the 21st, 1693, most that were sick died while the moon was eclipsed. I find the like observed on another occasion in Paris, where during an eclipse of the sun, the greatest care was necessary to preserve the sick. And as the sun shone out, they recovered. Okay, I'm reminded of April 8th, when the entire United States and people from other countries all came to party in the path of totality of an eclipse about 6 hours after other YouTubers had documented well all of the chemtrailing that was done along the entire path of the eclipse. while the media and social media were all getting everybody to go party and have fun, and while even local municipalities were even opening up public areas for people to congregate, and they made it so easy for millions of people to find places to be in that path of totality. They chemtrailed the shit out of that path. We saw them on YouTube. We've seen this the pictures, whatever they are, satellite or whatever. We saw those pictures. But we also know after April 8th, 2004, a whole bunch of those people in there were vaccinated. A whole bunch of them. What really was the intent and what really happened? How many people, is there any way to even discover this? How many people who were alive and vaccinated that celebrated that event no longer with us today? How do we even find out? According to this, it was known 350 years ago that if you're already infected, if you're already sick of something, then you probably die if you're ever in the path of an eclipse. What? WTF? They made that association back then, and it didn't matter if it was lunar or solar. But the remedy was sunlight. How bizarre. How bizarre. Tell you all the time, our world is not what you think. Our world is not what you think, man. 1693, a clear, pleasant day in Sicily. In the evening, some travelers in the country saw a great flame of light about an Italian mile distance, so bright that they took it for a real fire. And though they made directly to it, yet it still kept the same distance from them. While they were staring at this, began an earthquake. Next day, the air was overshadowed with darkness and tinged of a deep yellow. The sun was obscured. On the 11th was a second quake, which lasted 4 minutes. It was a pulse or perpendicular heaving up of the earth, upheaval, dark city shit. So strong that the island of Malta felt its fury. The sea sunk down considerably and the water bubbled up along the shore. In many places, the earth opened in long cliffs, and these sent out a deluge of water, sensibly sulfurous. Can't make this shit up. Again, 1693. The next day, its water returned from January the 11th till after September were considerable, and strong south winds preceded by noise like cannons at a great distance, some of longer, others of shorter duration, especially in cavernous places and in valleys between the mountains where the shakes were more violent. Darkness and obscurity of the air covered them all these months, though not so great as on January the 10th and 11th. The horizon all day dusky, the sun often and the moon always obscured at rising and setting. South winds have still been impetuous in the most sensible earthquakes. So crazy. What is going on? What is going on? All right, Catatonia. I'm looking at some stuff here. This is right here. It's death toll. Death toll is 254,000 people, 60,000 people. I'm just going through it. I'm not going to finish all this. I got too many. I over-prepared. In May, an extraordinary flood. I over-prepared. 1626. 3 suns appeared in 1626 overrun. 1626 is on the 138-year Phoenix periodicity. Another earthquake in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire on December 20th. I got too much. These are death tolls here in London. London bills for the plague, 13,700. Oh, that's the end. I did make it to the end. Well, I'll be damned. Well, I'll be diggity damned. 3 hours and 25 minutes. I made it to the end. Guys, This is 6 different videos that look at the Tartaria narrative from 6 different vantage points. If you really want to know the truth, I'd go through them. You ain't got to accept everything for true, but you do when you find something that's absolutely factual that you can't shake off. Yeah, you need to compare it with the claims of people. You have to understand when it comes to the Tartaria narrative, Satan's little season and all that, the burden of proof doesn't lie on you. It lies on the people claiming all this stuff. Just like a rock falling from space to end a hyper-advanced civilization 12,000 years ago, the burden of proof lies on them. And they try to meet that burden with the Atlantis narrative. Archaix collapsed that. They try to meet that burden of proof with the Age of Leo, zodiacal dating. Archaix collapsed that. They try to meet that burden of proof by citing bibliographic citations that look impressive. Well, Archaix proved you lied in your bibliography. Yeah, man. It's crazy what people have accepted to be true. It's crazy. It's insane. So this is just a 6th video. There may be a 7th when I come up with a new vantage point. But right now, this vantage point was just showing you where did a 1,000-year millennial reign of peace fit in? Where are you going to fit it in? Because it sure didn't fit into this historical, into this old book that provides source materials of older books that provide accounts of what happened all over the world. Where are you going to fit it in? Where's your Jesus and 1,000-year millennial reign? Answer me that. Ball's in your court. So, love you guys, but I've been sitting here too long. I kind of take great pride in my butt, and I don't want it flat. And it's been sitting here way too long. So I'm going to exit out with another good video. And I hope you guys do look at those. If you've missed any of those other videos, the links are going to be in the comments below, like within 2 minutes after I post this video. I've already posted them on X and I've already posted them in the community, but I'm going to post them in here as well. Love you guys.
They called it all a joke, wearing tinfoil crowns like kings wrapped in smoke. Eyes wide open while the world stayed blind, laughed until the truth left us all behind.